The series' one-star squadron debuted in 2022. It featured unpopular heroes combining their limited star power to create heroes for you. It's like a mix between Uber, Cameo, and 911. For these C-list heroes, the C stands for capitalism. People use the Heroes for You app for on-demand hero assistance. Situations you may need a hero for include, but are not limited to, alien attacks, transporting sensitive information, birthdays, or getting your kitty out of a tree. No job is too big or small, they will answer the call. I love this idea. Trust and believe, if I were a D or C-list superhero, I would be on here. I also think this idea is so clever from the writer's point of view. They were able to bring back a bunch of characters, so many fun characters all at once. The app and agency was led by Red Tornado, but other heroes you could request were the Heckler. I would request him. His power is literally just being annoying. Just send him to that person you mildly dislike. Takes care of it. Let me know down below who you would sick the Heckler on. Minuteman is available. He has a bunch of powers, but only for 1 minute at a time. There is Flying Fox, who is known for magic things like invisibility and illusions, good for a birthday. There are a bunch more heroes too. That's just a taste of all the options. I just love this idea. Literally all these heroes just deserve better. I have a soft spot for silly superheroes. What can I say? I like to laugh as much as I like the serious stuff. Section 8 made me giggle, specifically this one guy on the superhero team. His name is Defenestrator. Defenestrator from now on will be Mr. D. He literally just goes around with a window and smashes it over villains' heads. In all fairness, defenestration is literally the act of throwing someone out a window. I'm obsessed. Mr. D started out a villain but was recruited to the Hero Squad Section 8 by Hero 6-Pack. The team is made up of just wacky heroes with wacky names. We have Dog Welder. He welds dogs. I'm being so serious. There's Bueno Excelente. That is literally good, excellent in Spanish. Phlegm Gem. He has blinding phlegm. Gross. Friendly Fire. He is the most traditional. He shoots energy blasts. And then there is Jean de Baton Baton. He fights with, take a guess, a baton, and he is French. The entire thing is so camp and also a tiny bit problematic, which is probably why it hasn't picked up much steam. The Metal Men were created by Dr. William Magnus in the New Earth DC universe. The team is an interesting idea, metals with human-like bodies and the capacity to form thoughts and personalities. Dr. William created the Metal Men using his invention, the responsometer. It's a microcomputer that can give metal life. The Metal Men are made up of 5 male metals, gold, tin, mercury, lead, and iron, and 1 female metal, platinum. The team is such a specific brand of hero, so they fought a specific brand of villain too, monsters that appeared due to odd scientific research. The team has fought alongside Batman. Initially they were arrested by Batman because they were framed for something, but their names were cleared eventually. After getting their names cleared, they took down a bunch of evil robots together. The nice thing about the Metal Heroes is they can literally be remade whenever, as long as Dr. William has his microcomputer and a bit of the Metal Heroes can be brought back. The metals can also be combined to create the formidable foe alloy. Here's the thing, I spend time on the internet, clearly, and I'm also just a girl, so I will see these videos of people personifying different inanimate things like apps and countries and cars. So I think now is really the time to push the Metal Men. Inanimate objects given life are in right now, trust me. The Challengers of the Unknown have an interesting origin story. They were a bunch of guys on a plane that were flying to go be guests on a radio show called Heroes, later changed to a TV show. They were above average guys though. One was considered a master of skin diving, another a daredevil working in the circus, an Olympic wrestling champion, and trained jet pilot and war hero. Just quite a mix of people. Of course, the plane they were in went down and the Fab Four of course survived. After the crash, they all have that wow, we almost died moment, and they decided that they are all living on borrowed time and that they should challenge the unknown together. Challenging the unknown really is what these guys did. They were also a for-hire service too. They got hired to open Pandora's box. Pandora's box is something you famously should not open. However, they were offered $1 million. Not saying I would do it, but I get it. These guys start kind of taking on jobs that are too out there for others or too hard. They worked with the Pentagon of all places. One member loses their sight along the way, so a different member gives them an eyeball. They go through it. They had created their home base in a mountain. The personification of evil comes by and blows it up. At a certain point, the team really just can't catch a break. Eventually, there are new team members, a games designer, a physicist, a NASCAR driver, and a commercial pilot. What I think is cool about this particular DC team are the people on the team are just people. They have semi-regular jobs and just decided to start conquering challenges despite not receiving any superpowers. The Sea Devils, like the Challengers and and Batman were just regular people doing extraordinary things. They appeared in Showcase issue 27 in 1960 but got their own series the next year. The group was made of 4 people. Dane Dorrance was the leader. The other members were his girlfriend Judy Walton, Judy's younger brother Nicky Walton, and friend Biff Bailey. The group spent most of their time underwater, of course. They spent a lot of time living every ocean-obsessed kid's dream. They fought sea monsters and discovered underwater kingdoms. Like, truly, if I was guaranteed to never drown, I would join this crew so fast. Spending so much time with aquatic life and fighting in the sea, the group also fought for the sea on land. They are environmentalists, and are suggested to maybe be a bit extreme at times with their methods in the New 52 reboot, but they remain allies to Aquaman. The duality of the universe being manifested in human form has been done so many times, and yet it always hits. Hawk and Dove are another version of this. They were inspired by the political climate of the 1960s, with the characters debuting in 1968. People that were more in favor of war were often referred to as Hawks, and the dove is commonly a symbol of peace. So from that, we get the aggressive Hawk and the level-headed Dove. In the DC universe, the Lords of Chaos and Order decided to bestow powers on a set of brothers, Hank and Don Hall, making them effectively War and Peace. They wore matching outfits, one was red and the other blue. The pair worked well together, as Hawk often acted without thinking and Dove would think without action. Hawk was shoot first, ask questions later kind of vibe, whereas Dove made sure to provide the compassion and solutions that didn't require physical conflict. A perfect balance that was unfortunately thrown out of balance when Dawn passed on during the Crisis on Infinite Earths fiasco. It would be disastrous if just War was out here on their own, so a replacement had to be found, and that was Dawn Granger. The Lords chose her because she was level-headed and willing to find compromise and see reason and other perfect peaceful qualities. After the loss of his brother, naturally Hawk took some time getting used to his new counterpart, but eventually accepted her. The characters of Hawk and Dove have plenty of potential, and yet their solo series are never that long. They got some credit on the screen. They made their animated debut in Justice League Unlimited in 2004 episode, then made their live-action debut in 2018's Titans. I am about to put up missing posters for this team because honestly, where did you come from? Where did you go? Justicia is the hero team of Mexico. Justicia is Spanish for justice. The Justice League of Mexico, basically. They first appeared in Suicide Squad, Most Wanted, El Diablo, and Amanda Waller 5. They were in 6 too, but then goodbye, I guess. The team is led by El Dorado. He's almost a Mexican version of Superman. He can fly, and he's really buff. He is also capable of teleporting and minor telepathy. He also really looks like Miguel from Into the Spider-Verse. Anyway, there are 3 other members on the team. Akrara, a skilled martial artist and acrobat that wears a Mayan artifact that gives her teleportation abilities. Then we have El Muerto, an undead hero, which makes him hard to hurt the way you might hurt someone who's alive. And finally, we have E-Man. He wears a suit of armor that gives him superior strength. There are some connections between this team and the Justice League. El Muerto used to idolize Superman, and E-Man received a scholarship from Wayne Enterprises. E-Man and Batman also share similar parent trauma. Each individual hero has had a handful of appearances, it's just the team that hasn't come up much. I think they are neat and should get more chances to show off together. So now we have shed some light on the MIA superhero team for Mexico, now we are heading to look at the main team for Japan. Big science action. The founding members were Boss Bozozuko, he had a flaming head and a bike. Cosmo Racer was an alien android that required specific crystals to power his interstellar traveling. Goriko is a projection that comes from the mind of a young Japanese girl that is currently existing in a sensory deprivation tank. Hammer Suit Zero X is a monster armor made of sturdy metal and has drills for weapons. Junior Waveman is the Japanese version of the Sea Devils mentioned earlier, but this time there are 8 people. The solar physicist known as Rising Sun is on the team as well. A Japanese stuntman known by his hero name Sunburst was on the team but perished in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Finally, Ultimon, a hero dedicated to fighting giant monsters. Since its founding, the team has integrated some new members, and throughout history, big science action has saved Japan from many threats. The team might not be out as much anymore because after Final Crisis, the government confined the Super Squad to their base. We are about to get into the team that was originally published by Image Comics, later DC. The team is Wetworks. Wetworks is an actual term meaning work involving assassination, so you can probably guess the vibe. They are a covert operations team in the Wildstorm universe. Their leader is Jackson Dane. Technically, the original covert op team name was Team 7. The team was sent out to raid this cave, but the cave was already raided when they got there, except for these tubes filled with gold liquid. The team had a lot of remote controlled weapons on them that happened to start a countdown to detonate while they were inside. fine. And then everything goes wrong all at once. The tubes get shot, the liquid gets on these people and surrounds them, and then the explosives go off. But it turns out the liquid acted like protective armor because it was symbiotes. Adding a sim to someone automatically makes them cooler, but you know what makes them even cooler? When they fight vampires. This team has been running across Eastern Europe making sure they can't remake Twilight. They had lost members along the way and even temporarily stopped because of it. They regrouped after the world cataclysm and were called to Utah, of all places. Turns out someone was trying to make demonite vampire hybrids. In the ensuing fight, the Sims all mutated and the Wetworks team started getting new powers. The new power played a key role in stopping the vampire hybrids from existing. Atomic Fallout seemed to be a popular origin story for heroes. The Heroes of Ler are no different. The Heroes of Ler are a team of 5 heroes. Their parents lived close enough to the site of the atomic fallout on their world that their genes were altered, resulting in their children all being born with powers. The kids were sent away from the planet and decided to come to Earth. They were tricked, bamboozled, lied to by this guy named Dr. Martin King. He made the young heroes think that the Legion of Superheroes were criminals. Why? So he could avenge his brother's death. Because this random group of people from outer space started attacking them, the Legion also thought the Heroes of Ler were the bad guys. They fought for a bit, but soon realized that they were both fighting with good intentions and became friends instead. Unfortunately, one of the Ler members did pass away, Beast Boy. Not the one you're thinking of, a different guy. You know how I know the Heroes of Ler deserve better? They used one of the characters' name for another hero, and that guy is eons more popular. Their powers are even similar. The Ler Beast Boy has the power to turn into any animal, and the more popular Beast Boy does the same thing. There were 5 heroes on the team. The others were Gas Girl, she can change her body into any gas. There is a Volvo Lad, he can make his body into any point in human evolution, so he can become an ape or the kind of man humanity can't even imagine yet. Life Last can create living creatures from inanimate objects, Beauty and the Beast core. And finally, Duplicate Boy, he can duplicate any hero's superpowers. Eventually, the surviving 4 make it back to their home planet. They even gained a new member, Splitter, or Arm Fall Off Boy.
Is Rogglzar? Rogglzar? I don't know. To call this freaky alien dude a heavy hitter is a vast understatement. He's this intergalactic mercenary who's not here to play games. What sets him apart is his intense hatred for Kryptonians. He's got this burning grudge against them, and he won't stop until he wipes out everything related to Krypton, which is already pretty harsh. I mean, their whole planet was blown to smithereens, but that wasn't enough for this guy. And so, he's dedicated his life to traversing the cosmos, hunting down the few Kryptonians who've managed to survive. So picture this, when he first showed up, he took on Superman and Supergirl at the same time, and they had to pull out all the stops, not even beating him with their powers, but instead relying on this gadget called the Phantom Zone Projector, just to get the upper hand. And let me tell you, it was not an easy feat to get this guy down. But here's where it gets even crazier. After that, he breaks out with a whole bunch of criminals and jumps back into action, attacking Superman, Supergirl, and General Zod, and even John Kent all at once. Now, folks, you'd be pretty stupid not to put him in your top villain list. But you gotta admit, taking on these big name heroes all at the same time, some seriously impressive stuff, and it's something that doesn't get enough credit. At number 9, Char Bis. I don't know. This dude, he's one of those DC villains who doesn't hog the spotlight, probably on account of his horrible name. Now, in Aquaman's World of Foes, where Black Manta and Ocean Master usually steal the show, this dude enters the scene and is a real troublemaker. What's cool, or should I say twistedly impressive, is his partnership with Silica. These two were like a villainous power couple causing mayhem, but things got seriously out of hand when this dude went full rogue. After Skilla kicked the bucket, he went all in on Aquaman. I mean, he actually went as far as stealing a superhero's powers. He did just that, swiping Aquaman's mojo and using it to make piranhas munch on the hero's hand. But then the plot thickens. After Aquaman's retaliation splash, this dude tried to command the fish again, and it ended up blowing up in his face. Instead of controlling them, he sort of fussed those little fishies, becoming this piranha man hybrid, which sounds pretty cool. Now, he gained underwater skills and beefed up muscles, but compared to his hand-eating shenanigans, it was going from a blockbuster to a B movie, let's just put it that way. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Prometheus. Prometheus had a rough start in life, to say the least. His parents were crooks, and they met their end at the hands of the cops. So he ended up inheriting all their shady stuff and took on a path completely opposite to justice. What sets Prometheus apart is his brain power. He's like a dark reflection of Batman. This guy, without any superpowers, goes toe-to-toe against the entire Justice League. He's got these plans, like a villainous playbook on how to take down each member of the Justice League, and he actually almost pulled it off. Yeah, he single-handedly took down the big guns of the JLA, one hero at a time. The craziest part was how he hacked into their super secret Watchtower computers, which nearly led to the defeat of the most powerful superhero team on Earth, which takes some serious smarts and guts. And this was just his very first strike against the Justice League, so that's seriously a wake-up call for anybody who underestimated this cunning evil genius. At number 7 is Extant, I think. Alright, picture this bad guy as a sort of behind-the-scenes baddie pulling the strings and causing chaos. He started off as Monarch, which is already a big deal in the villain world, but then he teamed up with Parallax, got himself some time-traveling powers, and decided to tinker with the Multiverse. Pretty intense. Now, when Extant clashed with the Justice Society of America, it was like watching a showdown between a bulldozer and a sandcastle. He didn't just defeat them, he practically wiped the floor with these seasoned heroes. Some he aged up, while others he straight out just knocked them out. But the Justice Society of America didn't back down. They regrouped, got their act together, and eventually took Extant down. However, this initial attack was a real showstopper. It's like he made an entrance nobody could forget, a real shock to the superhero community. He might not always come out on top, but his impact is seriously unforgettable. At number 6 is Dr. Savannah. When it comes to the DC Universe's rogues gallery, there are some villains that get all the spotlight, while others get basically none. Take Dr. Savannah, for instance. He is to Shazam what Lex Luthor is to Superman. Just as evil and brainy as Lex Luthor, but without the fame, riz, or notoriety. But when it comes to mad scientists in comics, this guy is the OG. He's got the super incredible knack for scheming up and executing diabolical plans with brain power alone. But here's the thing, not many of his recent comics give him the chance to truly shine. That is, until the Multiverse Thunderworld Adventures comic. So in this epic scene, Savannah and his multiverse clones gang up and storm the Rock of Eternity. Now, the Rock of Eternity isn't your average hangout. It's a spot where the big shot wizard hangs out. And Savannah pulls a bold move and actually manages to lock up the wizard. Not stopping there, he decks out his own offspring with the powers similar to Shazam's crew, making it a superhero headache to stop him. I mean, just think about it, imprisoning a magical heavyweight and then turning your spawn into superpowered versions of themselves? Some next level supervillain stuff right there. So even if Dr. Savannah isn't grabbing headlines, don't underestimate the brilliance of this wicked mind in the DC baddie lineup. At number 5 is Vandal Savage. He's like a solid B-list villain in the DC world. Like, he's been around, tangled with superheroes, but somehow hasn't hit the big leagues yet. But don't write him off just yet. Check out his 853rd century version of himself in this storyline called DC 1 Million. Savage really amps up his game, buddying up with Solaris, the Tyrant's son, aiming to take down the Justice League of America across time and space. And guess what Savage actually pulled off? He did this crazy thing where he swapped the future team with the present one, almost spelling doom for both sides playing with time like that. But ultimately, Savage's pride got the better of him. In a classic karma strike, he got zapped back to a nuclear attack set off in the past, which, that's tough. At number 4 is Mordru. Mordru, the Sorcerer Supreme equivalent in DC's villain catalog, is a heavyweight in the magical corner of the DC universe. Like, his home planet is literally known as Sorcerer's World, the universal center of all magic, so you could guess he's pretty magical. He didn't just pop up once, he made a grand entrance by throwing down with the Legion of Superheroes way off in the future. Sneaky as they come, he even managed to sneak back into the past without anybody batting an eye. Now, when he crossed paths with the Justice Society of America, things went from zero to chaos in a flash. The heroes managed to trap him in a Dr. Fate amulet, thinking that they'd sorted it all out, but that was all according to Mordru's big plan. He flipped the script, snagged the power of Fate, and teamed up with Eclipso and Obsidian. They took over Earth, casting the world into a near-constant eclipse. At number 3 is Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze, initially known as Dr. Victor Fries, or Mr. Zero, started off as a typical icy antagonist in the world of comic books, but let me tell you, his story took a wild turn in 1992 with that Batman the Animated Series episode called Heart of Ice. Before that, he was just a goofy, run-of-the-mill baddie chilling in the background of Batman's world, but then something magical happened. The animated series reimagined Mr. Freeze, giving him depth we've never seen before. His super awesome deep voice that was really haunting and really made you feel his pain. Suddenly Freeze wasn't just freezing Gotham, he was a guy wrecked by sadness and revenge. The core of his story revolved around his wife Nora. Freeze was desperately trying to save her from a terminal illness, but corporate greed and tragic lab accident with cryogenic stuff turned him into an icy guy who can't survive outside of his suit. But then things got really icy in a bad way. In the live-action movie called Batman and Robin, remember Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze? Yeah, that one's with all the cold puns like chill out and nice to meet you. Yeah, it was super goofy that turned Freeze into a walking joke. Well, unfortunately, that's what many folks still remember him as to this day. But in the comics, Freeze stayed close to the serious version from the animated series until New 52 shook things up. Scott Snyder took Freeze in a different direction, making Freeze way less sympathetic by altering his reality. Suddenly, Nora wasn't his wife anymore, just some girl with a made-up illness. And the guy who pulled the plug on his research, surprise, surprise, it was none other than Bruce Wayne himself, which was a twist that made everybody involved look a lot less likable. So while some chop him up to just a dude with a freeze ray, he's actually way cooler than that. Haha. At number 2 is Zoom. Zoom, aka Hunter Zolomon, was like a rival to Wally West, much like how Reverse Flash, aka Eobard Thawne, is the rival to Barry Allen. In fact, a lot of the same themes from the Barry Allen story are reintroduced here. Zolomon used to be a regular FBI guy, but things took a wild turn when he tried to use the cosmic treadmill to fix up the past, which granted him these epic time-traveling powers. Now, Zolomon had this whole beef with Wally West, the fastest Flash, mind you. He wanted Wally to help him out with his time travel troubles, but when Wally West said no, things went haywire. Zolomon went all in, donning the Reverse Flash-style threads and took on the name Zoom, completely inspired by Eobard's Professor Zoom. Zoom's deal was trying to wreck everything the Flash ever stood for through deception and murder, which twistedly culminated in Zoom's plan to make West a better hero by causing him a life full of tragedies. Now what's mind-blowing is that Zoom managed to outspeed Wally West, who's the fastest Flash among Flashes. Imagine beating the fastest guy around, like that's no small feat. To take Zoom down, Wally had to dig deep and pull out all the stops, but despite the incredible feat, Zoom just doesn't quite get the recognition he deserves. Barry Allen's return and the rise of the Reverse Flash kinda stole Zoom's thunder, even though Zoom managed to outpace the top tier Flash, and that's no small accomplishment. And at number 1 is Hush. Meet Hush, also known as Thomas Elliot. This dude is not your average villain. He's not a Joker or Penguin per se, but he's got the cunning, the smarts, and he's a worthy adversary of the Caped Crusader, to say the least. Thomas Elliot, a childhood buddy of Bruce Wayne, grows up to become this hotshot neurosurgeon. But behind that successful facade lies a guy who blames Bruce's dad, Thomas Wayne, for messing up his life by saving his mom. That grudge transforms him into Hush, a master manipulator with a bone to pick with Batman. Now what's fascinating is how he plays the long game, standing out with his intricate and calculated strategies to take down Batman. What's even more impressive is the fact that he managed to outsmart the Dark Knight himself, which is not an easy task. Now what's cool about Hush is that he's not just the run-of-the-mill villain. I mean, sure, he's got dual pew-pews, which is pretty impressive, and he drops quotes from Aristotle, adding to this whole sophisticated vibe to his character, but what's really fascinating is how he challenges Batman on an intellectual level. He's not just there to beat him up, he wants to outwit him, which, believe it or not, is a tall order. Now the thing is, even though he's not as famous as some other Gotham villains, Hush managed to give Batman a run for his money, which is a super big deal. Like, imagine going toe-to-toe with the smartest kid in class and almost acing the test. That's Hush for you. He's underrated but seriously impressive in his own right.
Havoc has had a complicated relationship with heroics throughout his life. Initially, he wanted nothing to do with being a hero, but found himself dragged into the superhero lifestyle anyway, due to him being a mutant and constantly getting tangled up in stories involving the X-Men. However, I feel like being on the Avengers actually suits him better as a character, also allowing allowing him to get out from under his brother Scott's very long shadow. Havoc is very much a middle child, and I feel like often gets stuck as a result of this, so it was nice to see him come into his own. In general, I feel like Havoc simply doesn't get a lot to do in the comics. He was with Maddie during Dark X-Men recently and was heavily featured in Hellions, but in both of those stories he kind of feels like a side character somewhat. And in Hellions we basically were just dealing with all of Alex's trauma, which, you know, while important and I did love, don't get me wrong, I would still just like to see Alex when he's in his power a little bit more. And lately that's been missing somewhat from the comics with his character, I think.
Leave the saving of the world to the men? Silverclaw doesn't think so. Silverclaw is the daughter of mortal Jamie Santiago and a volcano goddess. The goddess gave Silverclaw to her father as a gift. She was to be the protector of his village. As Silverclaw was growing up, her powers began to show. Those powers are kinda like shape-shifting, specifically regarding animals native to South American jungles and forests. She doesn't need to fully transform her body into an animal to take on the characteristics of it. She assumes a form that combines her human appearance with the animals. She's done this with jaguars, monkeys, pumas, and more. Silverclaw was headed to America to meet up with Char Bis, oddly enough. She was his sponsor child. Her flight was hijacked, and the only way to ensure the other passengers' safety was if she agreed to help the bad guys. Eventually, the Avengers show up, defeat everybody, Silverclaw explains her side of the story, and the Avengers let her join so she can help them track down the hijackers. They thwarted the bad guys, and Silverclaw remained on the team.
Honestly, I just really love Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, and lately I feel like we haven't gotten enough of her. Unlike some of the others on our list though, Janet has at least gotten her dues in the past. I mean, she is also one of the original Avengers, but in the modern comics landscape, I feel like both Jan and her adopted, sort of in a weird way, stepdaughter, Nadia Van Dyne, have both fallen by the wayside.
We know Hawkeye, he's clearly doing well if his hit TV show and mainstream fame is anything to go by, but he had to learn all his skills from somebody. One of his teachers was Swordsman. He met Hawkeye while working in the circus. Swordsman's circus act was shockingly sword and knife based, and when Hawkeye finished his sword training, they were often a duo. Swordsman is an Avenger now, but he wasn't always a stellar citizen. He has robbed people and left people for dead and gotten himself banned from multiple countries and originally joined the Avengers as a double agent, but he eventually had a change of heart due to his heart. During a period where Swordsman is taking a required break from the Avengers, he ends up working for this gangster, and that's where he meets the eventual love of his life, Mantis. Mantis said she can fix him, and she did. Now Swordsman has the self-respect needed to 100% leave crime behind, and the pair rejoined the Avengers. It went well, but it didn't end well. He died. It was super tragic. Mantis yells, "Darling, it's a moment." He comes back in the form of a sentient tree eventually, then dies again, then is revived again during the Chaos War, then died again. He deserves better than that. All that character development for what? He also has a really cool sword. It can shoot energy rays.
I personally love Monica a lot. She's just a strong member of the Avengers who honestly very rarely gets enough love in the comics. However, it is important to note that there are pockets here and there for us Monica fans, but I do wish we just got more of her in general, especially as a leader, which I think Monica is pretty great at doing. Monica Rambeau was a leader of the Avengers for a while. Monica Rambeau was a leader of the Avengers for a while in the 80s, but her time in that role was pretty short-lived due to her being tricked and manipulated into giving up leadership by Dr. Druid, after she was fatally wounded in a battle. Not only did Monica Rambeau lose her role as leader, but she was also zapped of her powers at this time, because that happened in the confrontation that also wounded her, prompting her to give up her leadership role. So she was all around severely nerfed at that time, and also mainly because Dr. Druid was working to betray his teammates this all happened. Monica would also be known as the first woman to use the mantle of Captain Marvel. That's right, a lot of people think it's Carol Danvers, but it was actually Monica. But after leaving the Avengers would lose that name as well and go on to become Photon instead. Now she had to give up her name because Captain Marvel's son appeared kinda out of the blue in the comics and wanted to use the name for himself. Fortunately, Monica would go on to lead the Next Wave team later on in her career, but she would also later find out that she had been manipulated into this role by Beyond. And even after fighting back against the Beyond Corporation, who is admittedly evil, she would have her personality altered due to this traumatic experience. So yeah, it's been a very mixed bag for Monica throughout her history, sadly. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, and a lot of the things that I love to read her in, she also kind of gets messed up in.
One thing about me, I love Sleepwalker. I think he is so neat, and trust and believe if I can get him on a list, I will. The MCU judges books by their cover because at first, multiple Avengers think Sleepwalker is a villain. That is not the case. He is a good guy. Sleepwalker is not just his name, but also his job. The Mindscape is a dimension that is in all sentient things, including you and I. It has beings in it whose sole purpose is to be evil and make people go insane by invading their mind. The Sleepwalkers stop this from happening and protect the minds of innocents. One of these Sleepwalkers was tricked by a longtime enemy into entering the mind of Rick Sheridan. They fought in the dream, but when the villain escaped, our hero was trapped and bonded to Rick. Eventually, Rick learned of his Sleepwalker buddy, and the two became co-inhibitors of Rick's mind. The Sleepwalker used his time on Earth to fight the evil entities from the Mindscape that materialized in the physical world. He was a member of Operation Lightning Storm, and being a part of this initiative when Quiet Man started causing problems, Sleepwalker got recruited to the Avengers to help out.
Quazar never gets enough love in my opinion. I'm not sure if it's because he has a similar vibe to Captain Marvel, or even at times in a weird way, not really power related, but Wonder Man. And both Marvel and Simon are just put above Wendell for some reason. But ever since I read more about Quazar in Dazzler, which I highly recommend you check out if you haven't already, I became more intrigued by his character, and then as a result disappointed when I learned he wasn't really as prominently featured today as some other heroes are, for some reason. Granted, Quazar, while niche, has still been in hundreds of issues. Still, I wish he had his own book today, or at least appeared more regularly in someone else's solo series, or was just like on a team. Honestly, I miss the days of the old Dazzler comic. I loved him as a supporting character there. I just want to relive those days. Also bring the Dazzler series back, it's so good.
The rootinest tootinest cowboy in the Wild Wild West, Two Gun Kid. He isn't technically a cowboy, but he sure does look and act like one. Personally, I love the musical Oklahoma and by extension the cowboy aesthetic, so to me, this hero absolutely deserves the world. He is not supercharged, he is just a guy that wanted to be a hero. He trained until he was an expert gunfighter and horseback rider. He's also a master of the lasso, iconic. He is from the 1870s, he did all his training in the 1870s and grew very, very famous. Think like Annie Oakley, Billy the Kid. So how did he end up in the modern era? When the Avengers were fighting time-traveling thorn in their side Kang the Conqueror, they ended up conveniently in the same time as Two Gun. Two Gun was obviously interested in the people from the future and helped them fight. He did good and was offered a reserve spot in the 20th century, which worked out well. He could explore everything the modern world had to offer and only help the Avengers when absolutely necessary. Getting homesick for the homestead, he returned to his era eventually, but continued to help the Avengers whenever they visited. Two Gun Kid is part of the reason heroes like Hawkeye and Angel came to be. Hawkeye was inspired by Two Gun's heroism and took up the style when he became a hero, and Angel, before he was Angel, was Two Gun's doctor in his old age. Two Gun made sure to tell him about the heroes of the future, and those stories ended up inspiring Angel to become Angel. Two Gun Kid had an impact.
Look, I saw Madam Web, and it was an experience, to put it lightly. Of course, for this list, we're talking about Julia Carpenter's Madam Web though, not Cassandra, but to be honest, I wasn't too happy with how she was featured in the film either. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of why it was bad here because that would be honestly a whole other video. In fact, I've actually done two on that subject on my own channel, but trust me when I say it's a disaster of a film, okay? Just trust me. It's just so bad, and it feels like it undermines the powerful and much beloved character of Julia Carpenter, as well as honestly everyone else, but we're talking about Julia. Julia was the second woman to take up the Spider-Woman mantle after Jessica Drew, and it was during her time as Spider-Woman that she came to have a few adventures with the main Avengers team, later going on to fully join the West Coast Avengers. And I just think she's great. She doesn't get enough praise.
Hi, before I say this state name, I would like to clarify again, I'm Canadian, so please don't make fun of me. I will say it wrong. The man from Massachusetts, Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. The Black Knight is a mantle that gets passed down, so there have been a bunch, and not always good guys. The Black Knight, before Dane, his uncle, was a villain and requested that Dane not be. Good news, Dane wasn't. He joined the Avengers. He got on the Avengers' radar by telling them Magneto captured 2 of their teammates. He doesn't join right away. He spends some time at his family's estate first, a castle. You learn pretty quick that the Black Knight has a very specific medieval aesthetic. The Black Knight travels by Pegasus, and he has this really cool weapon called the Ebony Blade. The Ebony Blade is a double-edged sword, but seriously, it gives the wielder basically immunity and can cut through anything. But it will slowly corrupt its user, that's the downside. Black Knight officially joined the Avengers after defeating Kang together, but he had been an ally to them long before that. He was a great asset to the team. He wasn't just a great fighter with epic transportation, he was also incredibly intelligent. Black Knight might finally be getting the mainstream fame he deserves. He was in the MCU movie Eternals, played by Kit Harington. He wasn't like a major character, but at the end we see him gain possession of the Ebony Blade, so it's pretty clear it's him. And with Kit Harington in the role, it's definitely something to look forward to, even if we don't know when we'll see the character again on screen.
After the events of the superhuman Civil War, Iron Man created the 50-State Initiative. This was essentially an initiative to set up government-funded superhero teams throughout each of the United States. Some of these teams were already established groups of heroes, but for some states, completely new groups composed of local heroes were formed. The Sunflower State, Kansas, gained its team in the form of the Harvesters. This new team was made up of pretty strange heroes that we hadn't seen before. Topeka, who led the team, was basically just a super soldier. Then there was Pioneer, who had the power of the plains, as she put it. Sunflower, who was literally a human sunflower who got stronger under direct sunlight and appeared to have a high degree of durability. There was Meadowlark, who could fly and sing to hypnotize people. And then, of course, there was Grainbelt, whose body was literally made of grain that he could control. Why did they deserve better? Well, this team's only claim to fame came when they faced off against a zombie clone of the hero Hyperion, who is basically the Marvel equivalent of Superman, and he utterly destroyed each member of this team. They did not stand a single chance. Only Pioneer just barely made it out alive by raising up an entire herd of undead cattle and trampling the zombie Hyperion, who then succumbed to mad cow disease, and I wish I made that up. Now, most of you nerds have heard about the Skrulls. This alien race has been a nuisance in Marvel Comics ever since their first appearance in Fantastic Four #2. The Skrull members who fought the Four at this time ended up hypnotized into believing they were actually cows by Reed Richards, and they shapeshifted into and were stuck as cows. What I'm sure Reed did not anticipate is that these Skrull cows ended up finding themselves in a butcher and turned into beef. This Skrull beef was then consumed by regular old Earthlings. Now, while a good majority of people did not survive the Skrull cow meat, a select few did, and had the Skrull's adaptable DNA code transferred into their human cells, resulting in a condition called Skrullivoria-induced Skrullophobia. The infected individuals gained the ability to shapeshift like a Skrull, but also developed an intense irrational fear and hatred of the Skrull, and they came together to form the aptly named Skrull Kill Crew. Fueled by their irrational impulses to destroy the Skrull, they helped prevent the Skrulls from attacking other people, but they even faced off against other villains like Baron von Strucker. It's just a really unfortunate way to gain a superpower. Now, X-Force is the awesome Black Ops X-Men related team with characters like Domino and Cable and Cannonball and Wolverine and Warpath, and it's awesome. But for a short little while, it was decidedly not awesome. In the year 2000, X-Force got cancelled and rebranded into what eventually would become X-Statix. This team isn't exactly one of the premier mutant teams in the world, and that's putting it lightly. The original team was made up of the mutants Zeitgeist, who has the power of Super Puke, La Nuit with Dark Force powers, Battering Ram, who was a big purple goat looking man, Plasm, who had liquidy water powers, Gin Genie, who could create earthquakes depending on how much she drank, and Sluck, who was basically a squid man. But all of those original members, minus 3 of them who I didn't mention, and Sluck, who was blown up by a tank in South Africa, all got completely decimated in spectacular spectacularly embarrassing fashion during a rescue mission to save a pop music boy band named Boys R Us. Turns out their demise was actually planned by the team's manager, coach, and its leader, Zeitgeist, because they thought a team with a constantly changing roster and high body count would gain them fan interest. The team managed to go on with pretty horrible results. There have been 28 members of Ecstatics who have passed away over their history, with only 9 surviving. 9. Okay, so we have Ecstatics, we have XForce, we have the X-Men of course, and we have a whole handful of other X-branded teams, but some mutants aren't considered presentable to the outside world because whatever their mutation is, it has been deemed either gross or terrifying by the wider Marvel human society, or they are mutants who are just bitter about being persecuted for being mutants. This group banded together, named themselves the Morlocks, and headed down into the Morlock tunnels beneath New York City. Already, without anything happening to them other than their mutations, these characters have it rough and deserve better. But then, to add flame to the fire, the Morlocks undergo tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, with one of the worst being the event known as the Mutant Massacre, where Mr. Sinister and the Mutant Gambit put together a group of villainous characters and led them into the tunnels to commit, well, a massacre. And it was all because another villain, Dark Beast, created some of these Morlocks, and Mr. Sinister didn't like that. Sometimes it takes the smallest of things to bring people together, and while that may sound like an extremely beautiful sentiment, I'm saying it in relation to the villainous team known as the Headman, who it seems came together because each of their powers revolves around their heads in one way or another, and it's honestly kind of unsettling in my opinion. Putting their heads together, figuratively, not literally, these scientists sought out world domination, bringing them into conflict with the Defenders, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. The quartet consisted of Arthur Nagin, their leader, who had his head transplanted onto the body of a gorilla; Ruby Thursday, who replaced her own head with an organic computer capable of changing shape; Gerald Morgan, aka Shrunken Bones, who accidentally shrank his own skeleton, including his skull, so he basically just had really baggy skin; and Chandu the Mystic's head had been transplanted by Nagin onto a number of different bodies throughout his time, making him quite the versatile little guy. Not gonna lie. The Champions of Los Angeles were the first West Coast-based superhuman team. They formed like all great superhero teams do, with several heroes happening to just meet by chance against a great threat. In this case, that threat took the form of the Greek god of death, Pluto. The group consisted of 2 former X-Men, Angel and Iceman, the Greek god of strength, Hercules, who I swear is super underappreciated, Johnny Blaze, the original Ghost Rider, and the Russian spy Black Widow, who led the team. After defeating Pluto, the Champions of Los Angeles, or just the Champions, decided to stick together as a team. Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, was the wealth behind the group, and with his money they bought their own Quinjet and named it the Champ Jet, which I find hilarious because over time the members of this team started to become embarrassed by the entire idea of the team as a whole. Both Iceman and Angel called it an embarrassment and a nightmare because they had no idea what they were doing. But still, they had a few more adventures working with X-Force, and they had some additions to the roster with Black Goliath, who aided the team in a scientific aspect, and another Russian female hero, Darkstar, who was originally there to capture Black Widow but ended up changing sides instead. I'm gonna be honest, I kinda love the lineup of this team. I'd read it if they came back. Now, you remember how the Headmen all came together based on their head-related powers? Well, I'll do you one better. How about the Death Throws, whose powers and names all have something to do with commonly throwing stuff. The leader, ringleader, threw together teammates Bombshell, Knick-Knack, Oddball, Tenpin, and Throwdown into a group that honestly works really well together, juggling their various different throwing instruments between each other. They worked so well together, in fact, that they were even hired to and succeeded in breaking the villain Crossfire out of prison. However, once they had taken Crossfire to their HQ, they discovered that Crossfire was broke. His assets had all been impounded, and he had lost all of his useful connections. These guys did battle with characters like Captain America, Crossfire, Hawkeye, and even Loki, of all people, who stopped the group from robbing the Big Top Casino in Las Vegas. Their Marvel wiki even lists their origins as, and I quote, a joint effort to perform criminal and mercenary acts while using juggling expertise. I honestly can't even believe this group of villains exists and that they haven't been able to get Bullseye into their ranks. What the heck's up with that? Okay, of all the teams on this list, I think that Horiculture may be my favorite. For starters, they look so so cool, but then you find out that it's actually just a bunch of older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists and want to bring Earth back to a more pristine time when it had about 7 billion less people on it, and it was ruled by plant life. I just love how they use their regular names, and the names just kinda suit their ages and interests in plants. We got Augusta Bromes, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vetiver. Gosh! What a bunch of winners. But yes, that's right, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, specifically flowers. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men number 3. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of Horiculture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda, and they're also computer programmers selling software to Orcus to monitor Krakoan gateways. They did get pretty handily walloped though, so Second to last, as part of kid-centric Star Comics, Marvel decided to release a team composed of animal superheroes, which is cool. But the difference here is this team of animal heroes were cybernetically enhanced super intelligent animals with absolutely massive arsenals and awesome exoskeletons, which is much cooler. And they fought for the environment, which is even cooler. This team was made up of Boomer, a kangaroo, Lionheart, a lion, Soar/Slipstream, an eagle, Reckless, who was a bear, and Dr. Echo/Surfstreak, who was a dolphin. Does it sound kind of ridiculous? Sure, but it is awesome. This team was co-created by Multicore, spearheaded by Dr. Randall Pierce, and it was all part of Weapons 2, which itself was the second project after Weapon 1. Who would have thought? Also known as Project Rebirth, also known as the project that created Captain America. Now some of you may know that these projects were part of a bigger thing called Weapons Plus, who would eventually go on to create Man-Thing, Luke Cage, Nuke, Typhoid Mary, Phantom X, the Stepford Cuckoos, and of course, Wolverine. So most people know that they aren't exactly a good group of people. While their original series was cancelled after only a few issues in Wolverine and Captain America Weapons Plus #1, those two heroes investigated an abandoned Weapons Plus site where they found the team kept in hibernation tanks full of liquid. The bear, Reckless, was freed from his container but attacked the duo, resulting in his passing. And last up today, first ever introduced in 1989's West Coast Avengers Volume 2 number 46, the Great Lake Avengers formed after Mr. Immortal put out an ad in the local personals seeking men and women of action to join forces and form a team of super friends. This managed to catch the attention of Avengers members Hawkeye and Mockingbird. In order to help them out, the Great Lakes Avengers were trained by the duo, and the rest was history. The team is made up of pretty much Z-list heroes, with the main lineup usually consisting of Mr. Immortal, Doorman, Big Bertha, and Flatman. Naturally, as a sort of running joke throughout Marvel Comics since their introduction, the team goes up against some of the zaniest villains and situations I have ever seen, and they don't do particularly well. But I'll be darned if I don't have a soft spot for this team. The funny thing about most joke characters and teams is that they almost always end up actually doing some pretty extraordinary things from time to time. I can't think of any examples for the Great Lake Avengers, but I'm sure you guys can, and you can tell me about it in the comments below, because
at number 10 is Steel Spider. Oliver Osnick was a bit of a fanboy for Dr. Octopus. I mean, I don't really see why you would see this supervillain as a role model, but I digress. Anyway, Ollie wanted to be Doc Ock's sidekick, so he made these metal tentacles to impress him. But surprise, surprise, he eventually found out that Doc Ock wasn't exactly a role model worth following. That's where Spidey swooped in to save the day. Spider-Man showed him the ropes, and Ollie had a change of heart. He redesigned those tentacles into legs, and bam, the Steel Spider was born. He tried the hero gig for a bit, but life eventually got a bit too complicated. He hung up his super cape, should I say his metallic legs, for a while, hit the books at college, but then he came back during the whole Civil War debacle. Now, here's the kicker. Venom eventually would go on to bite his arm off, which was pretty rough. After that, things got hazy. Last we knew, he got caught up in the Superhuman Registration Act mess and ended up in medical prison. Poor guy just trying to do good, but got tangled up in a whole web of complications. At number 9 is Yuri Watanabe's Wraith. Yuri Watanabe used to work for the NYPD and was literally the only cop who had Spidey's back, while the rest of the entire task force weren't too keen on the web slinger. She and Spidey were doing alright as a duo until the supervillain named Massacre showed up. Tried as they might, they couldn't stop his rampage in time. crime, and this failure led to Yuri getting the boot from the case, and she wasn't too happy about it, to say the least. So what does she do? She reinvents herself as Wraith. No cape, no superpowers, just her brains, her detective skills, and some nifty little gadgets to help her take down the bad guys on her own terms. Now, Spider-Man wasn't completely on board with her solo gig, given her total lack of powers and whatnot. But when push came to shove, they did team up to tackle Mr. Negative. Now, even though Yuri was included in Insomniac's Spider-Man game, many fans still don't think that minor appearance did the character true justice, so we're hoping that changes in the future. If you're enjoying the video so far, please take a second to support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 are the Brooklyn Avengers. These guys got their powers in the most bizarre way possible, thanks to their landlord and some radioactive bed bug spray. Yeah, imagine that. They're like the accidental superheroes of Brooklyn. So back in the day when Peter Parker was still a budding superhero, he teamed up with this crew, which included Psi and Phi, two telekinetic brothers. The Hipster, that's Hipst with an apostrophe R, pretty cool, who's an old dude who could hypnotize people. Paintball, who could generate paint bursts, kind of like a weaker version of Squid Kid from Splatoon. We also got Boilermaker, who's an intuitive machinist. Mints, who could charge candies into weapons. And Rotary, who could spin any object around. Yeah, seems like some of these guys hold the short end of the stick when it comes to their powers. Now, even despite some of these powers being still a little lame, Spidey still managed to learn some cool moves from them, skills that would actually come in handy later on in his crime-fighting escapades. Now, fast forward a bit, and things took a turn for the worst for this superhero team. Someone starts knocking off these Brooklyn Avengers one by one. Spider-Man, being the good guy he is, jumps back in to help out his pals. You know how these superhero stories go, there's all kinds of chaos. Their whole apartment building eventually got wrecked in the process. Despite the setback, these Brooklyn Avengers are resilient. They decide to stick around and help keep their neighborhood safe, even though they haven't made a comeback in Marvel Comics ever since. Who knows, maybe someday they'll swing back into action. At number 7 are the Slingers. So the origins for this one is a bit crazy, as Spider-Man got into some trouble he didn't ask for when he was framed for a crime he didn't commit. Thanks a lot, Norman Osborn. To clear his name, Spidey came up with 4 new superhero identities and rocked these 4 unique cool costumes. But once the mess was sorted out, he ditched those personas and went back to being your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Now here's where the plot thickens. You see, Black Marvel, an old retired hero, got his hands on those snazzy outfits and decided to hand them to 4 college kids. These young guns put on those suits and boom! One day you're a regular student and the next you're rocking a superhero suit fighting crime. These teens became the group known as the Slingers. Led by Prodigy, an expert freestyle wrestler with boosted strength thanks to his super suit, his team of Slingers also includes Dusk, who rocks a suit made from antimatter in the negative zone, which allows her to teleport, manipulate dark force energy, and she's also clairvoyant. Then there's the Hornet, a genius inventor slash expert in all things hard and software slash Olympic level athlete who actually had made his own Prowler suit first before being given the Hornet wings. And lastly, there's Ricochet, who has superhuman agility and who can chuck discs that deliver incredible force that also may explode on impact. The former monikers of Peter Parker may not be as famous as Spider-Man, but they're out there making a difference, one sling at a time. At number 6 is Solo. Solo is a lesser known ally of Spider-Man in the Marvel comic universe, whose name is actually James Bourne, a military man betrayed by his own team who transformed into Solo, a guy who's all about hunting down terrorists and bad guys. He's got this cool thing going on where he can also teleport, which definitely sets him apart from your average crime-fighting crew. Now, Solo doesn't always see eye to eye with Spidey, especially since Solo doesn't mind ending people. Nevertheless, sometimes they've got to team up to tackle some big bads together, sort of like a good cop, bad cop duo, but with superpowers. They've faced off against some serious threats side by side, making for some pretty epic comic moments. Plus, Solo even had a stint with Deadpool's crew of not-so-heroic heroes, the Mercs for Money. But staying true to his calling, he went back to his solo gig, fighting crime his own way. At number 5 is Nightwatch. Nightwatch, who honestly looks like a knockoff Spawn, albeit, and dare I say, slightly cooler looking with his demonic skull-shaped insignia on his face. Anywho, in the far future, he holds the moniker of Night Eater, who repents and attempts to undo his image as a villain, and so he resorts to altering the past. Now taking on the heroic moniker of Nightwatch, he actually would eventually try to reset everything and escape his now heroic responsibilities, but he was dragged back into heroism once more to stop a dude who had stolen parts of his costume. Eventually, he'd team up with Spidey against Carnage's chaos in New York City, leading to Nightwatch getting offed by a pair of criminals during the Great Game comic art, but thanks to some comic book logic, he managed to survive. Now, eventually, S.H.I.E.L.D. She-Hulk would unravel the truth about his alternate future as a villain, and the reformed hero now faces the music behind bars. At number 4 is El Muerto. So picture a whole family of luchador wrestlers passing down a mystical mask called El Muerto that gives them extra powers, which is basically the setup for Juan Carlos Estrada's story. Now poor Juan gets handed this responsibility, but ends up flubbing it by losing in a fight against a villain named El Dorado. The consequence is that Juan's got to beat Spider-Man to get his groove back, but that plan flops too. But instead of being all, I'm the hero, you're the loser, Spidey's like, let's team up, because got some moves, bud. Together they take down El Dorado, and Spider-Man helps Juan find his path. After that, Juan kind of fades into the background, occasionally popping up in some storylines. Now, El Muerto might not be the headline act, but that team up with Spider-Man was a pretty neat moment for this underrated ally. Coming up third is Bluebird. Back when Peter Parker first got his powers, Sally was right there in his world. She was full of energy, always seeking thrills, which often landed her in trouble. One time, she stumbled into a showdown between Spider-Man and Electro, but it was at this moment when Sally decided to become a DIY hero, suiting up as Bluebird. However, she was more of a bother than a help to Spider-Man, not really listening to warnings to stay out of it. Sadly, her heroic stint ended tragically as she perished in a car crash. Later on, a clone of Sally would show up, but it's unclear if this one survived for real or vanished like the rest of the clones. At number 2 is Shock. Shock might not be the most famous Spider-Man buddy, but this guy deserves a little bit of spotlight. Todd Field is just a regular dude whose dad worked for the bad guys, but only because he had no choice. Todd's dad was trying to make a powerful suit that taps into some crazy dark force dimension. But tragedy struck when a villain named the Crown offed Todd's dad and yoinked the suit. Todd, fueled by revenge and determination, rebuilt the suit, becoming the electrifying hero Shock. He and Spidey teamed up, taking down the Crown by overloading his suit. Now Shock would eventually get caught up in some bad stuff, get zombified by the Hand, and taken down. Luckily, Wolverine and the team at S.H.I.E.L.D. helped him out, fixing his now zombified mind. Since then, nobody knows where Shock is, but man, he deserves more credit for his electrifying heroics. And at number 1 is Cardiac. Cardiac is a superhero who's kind of like the Punisher, but instead of taking down the Mafia, he's tackling the messed up healthcare system. So he's got a sick costume, cool gadgets, and a heart replaced by a fancy device called a beta particle reactor, which gives him powers that no regular human could have. Now his origin story hits pretty hard. Elias Wortham, Cardiac's alter ego, lost his brother to an incurable disease. Motivated by tragedy, he studied medicine and ended up in a pharmaceutical company's board. But here's the kicker. This is where he discovered that the pharmaceutical company had actually hid a cure that could have saved his brother's life. Why? Because it wouldn't have made them as much money, obviously. That's the harsh reality Cardiac reflects, a system valuing profit over people's well-being. He's not just a regular hero. He fights with a sense of justice and moral obligation, making him a standout character deserving more recognition. He's not just muscles and gadgets though. He's super smart, a genius in fact, and a skilled surgeon. But his beta reactor of a heart always needs recharging, and if it fails, he's in for some trouble. Now his gear is super awesome too. He has a staff that shoots energy blasts and a high-tech glider for quick flights. All in all, Cardiac is a hero taking on big problems with a big heart, or well, a big beta particle reactor. At number 10 is Cardiac. Cardiac is a superhero who's kind of like the Punisher, but instead of taking down the Mafia, he's tackling the messed up healthcare system. He's got a cool costume, cool gadgets, and a heart replaced by a fancy device called the beta particle reactor. This thing gives him powers like no regular human could have. He's got this vibranium mesh all over him, making him super stealthy. As for as bulky as his suit is, it doesn't make a sound when he moves. And also, he's crazy strong, like 15 tons strong. Plus, he's faster than any Olympic sprinter, and he can keep going without getting tired. But his origin story is what hits really hard. Elias Wortham, Cardiac's alter ego, lost his brother to an incurable disease. Motivated by this tragedy, he studied medicine and ended up in a pharmaceutical company's board. But here's the kicker. While working there, Elias discovered that they hid a cure that could have saved his brother. Why? Well, because it wouldn't have made nearly as much money. That's the harsh reality Cardiac reflects, a system valuing profit over people's well-being. He's not just a typical hero, he fights with a sense of justice and moral obligation, making him a standout character deserving more recognition. A miniseries dedicated to him could shed the light on real-world issues within the healthcare industry. He's not just muscles and gadgets though, he's super smart, like a genius, and a skilled surgeon. But here's the catch. His heart needs recharging, and if it fails, he's in for trouble. He's got all kinds of high-tech stuff like shooting energy blasts and a hang glider for quick flights even. All in all, Cardiac is a hero taking on big problems with a big heart. Or rather a big particle reactor. At number 9 is the God Squad. The God Squad in Marvel Comics might not ring a bell for many, but they are a powerhouse of a crew you just cannot overlook. I mean, seriously, it's crazy that nobody knows about this divine team up. Picture this, at one point or another, the squad had the likes of Thor, Venus, Cersei, the Silver Surfer, Snowboard, Makabashi, Ajax, Amadeus Cho, Adam, and freaking Galactus teaming up to tackle massive threats. God Squad was assembled at the behest of Athena in order to fight against the Skrull Pantheon. Now, what's unique about the God Squad is that they're a mix of deities that come from a vast variety of different cultures teaming up against mega threats. Think of it kind of like Marvel's A-team of gods facing up against the baddest of bad guys. It's like a crash course in mythology, but Marvel style. Imagine if Marvel decided to give these guys heroes more comic time, or better yet, give them a chance on the big screen. A spin-off from Thor or Eternals could open a whole new world of epic battles and ancient stories. Who knows, maybe in the next big Marvel movie we'll get to see the God Squad take on some universe-threatening villains. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Rage. Rage is a Marvel superhero who's kinda got Luke Cage powers and personality, but sadly doesn't get nearly as much attention as Luke Cage does. He joined the Avengers way before Cage did, but got less spotlight after quitting. He told them that real heroes do more than just fight bad guys. In the comics, Rage's story is pretty twisty. He's been in the Avengers, the Initiative, and the New Warriors, sometimes seen as a villain and a hero. He started heroing super young by lying to fit in with the top heroes. But here's the thing, Rage isn't always liked by other heroes. He's made mistakes because of his anger issues and faced rejection. He struggles with big stuff like race, age, and what being a hero really means. And that's why he's super underrated in the Marvel world. At number 7 is Sentry. So here's the lowdown on Sentry. His alter ego is Bob Reynolds, a regular dude who gets injected with this crazy experimental serum that turns him into the Sentry, and his powers are out of this world. He's got strength matching the Hulk, he can fly faster than Superman, and he packs enough energy to make the sun jealous. But here's where it gets really interesting. This dude's got some serious mental baggage. He's got this whole Jekyll and Hyde thing going on, because on one side he's the Sentry, all about saving the day, being a hero, and stopping bad guys. Then there's the flip side, the Void, where things get really dark. Part of him that can basically tear entire galaxies apart, making Hulk look like a kitten in comparison. See, the deal is, Sentry's struggle with his dual personality makes for some seriously intense stories. Like, come on, a schizophrenic superhero with the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns who can either save galaxies or destroy them? That's freaking awesome! But here's the kicker. Marvel hasn't given this guy as much spotlight as he deserves. Seriously, he's got potential for some mind-blowing tales, but they've just been keeping him in the shadows. With powers like his, you would expect him leading the Avengers or headlining big events, but no, he's just been kept in the background. It's like having a Ferrari and just using it for grocery shopping. It just doesn't add up. Marvel needs to rev up Sentry's storyline because he's a character with the potential to blow minds. At number 6 is Hank Pym. Dr. Henry Jonathan Pym is one of those Marvel superheroes that doesn't always get the spotlight, but trust me, his story is pretty intense. Imagine being haunted by guilt and self-doubt like all the time. That's pretty much Hank Pym for you. He's a complicated dude, dealing with things like bipolar disorder and depression, even coming close to giving up on life once. But you know what's impressive? Despite all this, he's still focused on helping humanity through science and heroism. Hank's journey wasn't all smooth sailing. There's the whole arc called the Trial of the Yellow Jacket, where he hits absolute rock bottom. Imagine feeling like you messed up big time and letting your friends down. He faces consequences, seeks redemption, and finally, he owns up to his mistakes. That's character growth right there. But then things got tough again. Ultron, Hank's creation, got him tons of guilt. It's heartbreaking to see him struggle even when he's trying to be an Avenger again. He battles inner demons, his fears, and a messed up relationship with Janet. It's a roller coaster of emotions. Later on, writers didn't do Hank Pym justice, painting him as a punching bag in the Bendis era. But Avengers Academy does him justice, showing his heroic side as a mentor to troubled kids. Hank, like all of us, struggles with mental health and trying to fit in, which hits close to home for many. He represents anyone seeking a second chance, which is super heroic in its own way. At number 5 is Layla Miller. Forget what you saw in House of M, that wasn't the real Layla. The one who matters is in X Factor Volume 3 by Peter David. So there's this mutant detective agency, and Layla just walks in and starts working there. She's not your typical superhero, she's a mastermind. She's like a problem solver who knows everything before it happens. See, there's this bad guy, Damien Turp, who's a time-traveling troublemaker. He tries to mess up X Factor's plans, but Layla is steps ahead, freaking an assassin and taking him out without breaking a sweat. She's the reason Trip's schemes fall apart, and she does all this while while saying she just kinda knows stuff. I mean, seriously, Layla is so cool that even the top villains like Dr. Doom and the King of all Hells owe her favors. At number 4 is Songbird. Songbird, aka Melissa Gold, has a roller coaster of a storyline in the comics. Starting out as a baddie, but later finding her way to the good side, she's had quite the journey. Her backstory is no walk in the park either. Runaway life, family troubles, the whole shebang. Now what makes Songbird stand out is her powers. She can manipulate sound like nobody's business. She's got these implants and enhancements that let her do some seriously cool stuff like sonic blasts, force fields made out of sound. She can even craft solid objects like weapons or platforms using sound waves. And flying, she's got that down too. But hold your hats because there's more. Songbird can mess with people's heads using her voice. I'm talking mind control here, though it's easier with weaker-minded folks. In a nutshell, Songbird's got this killer power set that Marvel could dive into way more. She's got the potential to shake things up big time, especially in the Thunderbolts crew. Is yet another street fighting powerhouse with powers akin to Luke Cage. This dude, a former UWC fighter, got juiced up with powers by Dr. Carl Malice, which sounds cool at first, but here's the twist. Along with those powers, he got hooked on a substance that was supposed to keep him going strong, but instead, it messed up his mind big time, amping up his aggression. Demolition Man rolled with Daredevil, Captain America, and even kicked it with the Avengers, but after all this, after all that superhero cred, he ended up forgotten, wandering the streets in his old getup, homeless. It's a sad deal. He had a heart of gold, but somehow got lost in the shuffle of Marvel big names. At number 2 is Daredevil. Daredevil doesn't nearly get the credit he deserves. I mean, lots of folks who aren't into comics just see him as a blind dude in a red suit. They think that he's an easy win for anybody, but that's not true. Matt Murdock's powers are rad, not lame. It's probably because that old Ben Affleck movie totally messed things up for him. They completely got his powers wrong. Like, people think he only sees with sounds like echolocation or something, but that's so off. He's way cooler than that. Murdock was originally enhanced by radioactive isotope, which later blinded him, and as a result, he possesses superhuman senses, agility, reflexes, balance, and etc. Murdock's nervous system has also increased some of his abilities at peak human level. See, Daredevil can sense everything around him perfectly. He doesn't need to tap stuff to see. He's not just about hearing, he's got a full-on super sense thing going on. But it's frustrating that so many people don't get it. But you know what? Maybe it's better this way, because being underrated might be why he gets the best stories. If he was big as Spider-Man or Batman, writers might mess up his character, so maybe it's cool that he flies under the radar. And coming in at number 1 is Iceman. Alright, let's get something straight here. Bobby Drake is one of the most powerful superheroes, period. Because his superpower isn't ice or cold, it's based on molecular motion. He has the power to influence the speed of molecules, thus making things colder, which is obscenely powerful. He's been shown to prevent nuclear explosions. He's created ice walls so thick and strong it contain the Hulk. With a single thought, he can freeze the molecules and dissipate an entire person's body. He has the ability to block other mutants from accessing their powers too. In organic ice form, you can destroy his body, and he's still able to reform it, essentially making him close to unkillable. He can use surrounding moisture to grow in size and gaining superhuman strength in the process. Even though he's done all these things, he still hasn't tapped into his full potential. Now, while most of us astute nerds know about hydrokinesis allowing control over water molecules, there's more beneath the surface. He's manipulated water to turn himself into it, journeying through its very molecules. Yet his lesser known ability involves cellular replacement. Bobby discovered that he could draw ambient moisture into himself, using it to replace his own cells one piece at a time. This adaptation lets him sidestep fatal neurotoxins by dissipating poison molecules into vapor and substituting untainted ones from his surroundings. Thus, he effectively heals and renews his body pretty much on command, demonstrating that as long as moisture exists, Iceman stands invincible, a testament to the hidden layers of the mighty superhuman narratives.
Coming in at number 10 is Takuya Yamashiro. Instead of being Peter Parker, the Japanese Spider-Man is Takuya Yamashiro, a motocross racer and son of astrophysicist Dr. Hiroshi Yamashiro. Now, unlike most other versions of Spider-Man, Takuya was introduced through the live-action Japanese Spider-Man TV show, and with that, his character differs quite a bit. For starters, his spider powers are a little bit less powerful due to the budget constraints for the show, which is a hilarious reason. But don't you dare think that makes this guy a pushover. To make up for his less powerful spider powers, Takuya has a massive kaiju fighting mech named Leopardon or Leopardon, Power Ranger style, with arm rockets, an absolutely massive sword, and a boomerang. He uses Leopardon and his spider abilities to fight the Iron Cross Army, a group of suspiciously human-looking aliens from an unnamed world who are led by one Professor Monster. Now, due to his popularity and just how awesome he is, Takuya Yamashiro has become an official character in the Multiverse, coming from Earth 51778, and he has appeared in comics fighting against the Inheritors alongside the Spider Army in the Spider-Verse event, and almost all the events that spun off of that. Number 9. Earth X Venom. In the alternate future of Earth 999, basically every single person has superpowers. Things have gone apocalyptic, and in an act of vengeance, the Venom symbiote bonded to the daughter of Peter Parker, May Parker. While her retired and cynical pops ain't too thrilled about it, May does actually have complete control over the symbiote thanks to her advanced and honed spider sense, which was something the symbiote was not expecting to happen. Venom and her father, Spider-Man, go on to join the superpowered police force and fight crime and supervillain threats together. Now eventually, she, after the death of Death itself, goes on to be recruited by Kang the Conqueror as part of a multiversal team to fight the Apocalypse Twins. In addition to her proportional spider powers plus the enhanced spider sense, she gains all the usual symbiote powers plus a few extra, like what seems to be a form of telepathy, and it is believed that her symbiote could go on to mutate even further to gain more powers if Marvel wants to do that. She's one of the coolest looking versions of Venom while also being one of the most capable around. Number 8. Brother Mutant. Unlike almost any other version of the Scarlet Witch, Scarlet Warlock was a male version of the crazy powerful character from Earth 127, appearing in Exiles issue 85 from 2006. But if he wasn't already powerful enough with the usual abilities possessed by the Scarlet Witch, which are a lot, he was also combined with this world's version of Wolverine, Magneto, Quicksilver, and Mesmero to become Brother Mutant, when he attempted to use his magics to imbue Magneto with Wolverine's adamantium skeleton. Now, Brother Mutant became a single entity with all their combined powers, and he went a little bit nuts, vowing to end the life of every non-mutant on the planet Earth. Multiple teams of alternate versions of Wolverine were sent to this alternate Earth to try and correct the mistake that was Brother Mutant even existing, and almost all of these Wolverines failed. The last group of Wolverines, alongside the Exiles themselves, were able to finally bring him down, eventually. Number 7. General James Howlett. In the second volume of Extreme X-Men, joining a team of multi-dimensional mutants that hunt down evil Professor Xavier's across many dimensions, is a much different version of Wolverine. Hailing from the reality of Earth 12025, this version of our feral mutant is the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada, and Viceroy to Her Majesty's expedition to Shangri-La. He is like a version of Wolverine who is also mixed with President Theodore Roosevelt. General James Howlett is an adventurer and hero alongside his partner and lover, the demigod Hercules, or Heracles if you prefer. These two shared a love that was built after years and years of working together, and their bond was so strong that Hercules gave James a super cool upgrade in the form of a skeleton made of adamantine, a godly golden metal even stronger than adamantium, making Wolverine completely indestructible and immune to telepathic attacks. Unfortunately, due to the god-on-mortal nature of their relationship, the Greek gods did not approve and banished the pair to Tartarus, where they fought hordes and hordes of lost and damned souls for 4 years straight. Number 6. Spider's Man. On Earth 11580, Peter Parker was taking a tour of a lab that was conducting radiation experiments on a colony of spiders, when lo and behold, Peter fell into the spider habitat and was promptly devoured by the entire colony. Now fear not, because Peter would sort of live on, because in a horrifying twist of events, the spiders had absorbed Peter's consciousness and became a hive mind that formed together to masquerade as a human hero and fight crime, thus becoming Spider's Man. Spider's Man fought crime for a time, but unfortunately developed a taste for human flesh. The spiders managed to hide this for a time and were recruited by the superior Spider-Man in his multiversal quest to defeat the Inheritors. This colony eventually betrayed Otto by joining forces with the Norman Osborn Spider-Man of Earth 44145 to try and destroy the Web of Life and Destiny. This plan failed, but Spider's Man did manage to spread his spiders across the multiverse, giving him an anchor in every different reality, and that is impressive. Number 5. Space Punisher Hulk. To my knowledge, the version of Hulk appearing in the wacky Space Punisher story has only appeared in 2 comic books, but despite that, he has shown that he is completely terrifying. For starters, he is a completely separate entity from Bruce Banner, whose body is literally trapped inside of the Hulk. Hulk, while having all the powers of the Hulk, also had an extra set of arms and is quite a bit taller. He is described as a destructive killing machine, well known for destroying spaceships, brutally defeating the Fantastic Four, taking out Doc Samson with his own hair, biting straight through Sabretooth, and somehow taking out Deadpool by literally tearing his head off, which shouldn't actually work, but whatever. He defeated and ended the life of 6 Watchers single-handedly, broke the leader's back in combat, and he also ripped out Bruce Banner from his own chest. I don't even understand how that works. He is virtually invulnerable, seemingly indestructible, and invincible. He can move faster than light and pass through barriers of existence and reality. The Hulk is scary on a regular day. Space Punisher Hulk? I'll pass. Thank you. Number 4, Noh-Varr. Now, to be completely fair, this is not a variant of one character, but he is someone who has held the same title as another hero, and he does come from an alternate universe. Created by Grant Morrison and J.G. Jones, Noh-Varr is a Kree from the alternate reality of Earth 200080, and I'm just gonna say, he's weird. Why? Well, because this particular Kree had his DNA altered with the genes of a cockroach. They also gave him nanobiology. This gives him a whole bunch of special attributes: superhuman strength, stamina, agility, and a top speed of 150 miles per hour on land. He is triple jointed, can reroute pain, has hallucinogenic saliva, technopathy, he has mental control over his body, can wall crawl, has super hearing, and can reach faster than light speeds of flight. Is it insane that this even happens? Yes, but it does. While he is more commonly known as Marvel Boy, when he was in our 616 universe, the Skrull Captain Marvel Kinnear inspired Noh-Varr to become Captain Marvel, which he did, but as part of Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers before abandoning the team. Number 3, Killmonger the Destroyer. The Destroyer armor is something that I always kind of forget exists. It only appears every now and then, and it's always a huge deal when it does, but I am so used to it only appearing in Asgardian related stories, so needless to say, when it showed up being retrofitted for the Black Panther villain Killmonger in Avengers Forever as part of the multiversal Masters of Evil, I was more than happy to be taken by surprise. We get a better picture of this villain's story in issue 6 of Avengers Forever. When T'Challa was still just a wee little baby, this Killmonger the Destroyer destroyed Wakanda, single-handedly putting the Wakandan gods under his thumb and turning the country's warriors to ash. Killmonger was traveling the multiverse from Earth to Earth, Wakanda to Wakanda, destroying every version of T'Challa that he could, except for the one that would escape to become the Sky Spider, the Vibranium Man, and eventually the Star Panther. King Killmonger would travel on his ship alongside his War Panther mercenaries, using his destroyer armor to level entire cities and entire planets. As part of the Masters of Evil, he was a pretty intimidating foe. Number 2, Tony Stark Sorcerer Supreme. In All New X-Men Annual Number 1 from 2014, Marvel gave us a version of Tony Stark Iron Man from the temporary reality number of 591. Tony, in this reality, successfully brought together the Avengers to permanently end the threat of Thanos on this universe. Because of the Avengers accomplishing that insane feat of strength and saving pretty much the entire universe from the threat of Thanos, the alien races of that universe rewarded the Earth and its heroes with advanced alien technology, allowing the Earth under Tony Stark's watch to become a utopia. Tony himself would start to lean more into his mystical side with all the extra time he had after saving the universe, and eventually he became the Sorcerer Supreme and was able to solve further conflicts without needing to do any kind of real fighting. Last I've heard, this Tony was living youthfully comfortable at 126 years old. Now this isn't the only Tony to become the Sorcerer Supreme, but he is certainly one of the most accomplished, yet he's only actually appeared 6 times in total, and he only shows up for tiny little moments here and there. And finally, in at number 1, it's Mar-Vell of Earth 9997. In this universe, Mar-Vell of the Kree is pretty similar to his 616 counterpart, only after passing on, he found himself in the realm of the dead. Now this is an insane story with a lot of moving parts, but essentially, Mar-Vell ends up recruiting the other dead heroes of the world to a crusade against death itself, all the while being reborn on Earth and collecting powerful artifacts and even destroying the Kree Supreme Intelligence, which bolstered his army in the realm of the dead. Eventually, he defeats both Thanos and Death herself and creates a paradise for the dead in the negative zone. But that creates a whole bunch of problems as he realizes the living can no longer pass away now, so he restores death. It's truly insane. Mar-Vell had the power of eternity, meaning he basically had limitless power, but also for a time, he had access to, get this, the Ultimate Nullifier, Anti-Metal, the Book of the Vishanti, the Darkhold, the Orb and Eye of Agamotto, Psycho Man's Emotocaster, High Evolutionary's Transmogrification Device, the Silver Surfer's Power Cosmic, Kyle Richmond's Eyes, the Cosmic Consciousness, and the Mandarin's Power Rings. Insane.
Everyone always forgets about Eric Masterson. Who is he? Well, he used to basically be Thor. For a while, Eric wielded Thor's hammer and took on his role as the Thunder God. Eventually, he'd go on to become his own hero, taking up the mantle of Thunderstrike, and no longer wielding Mjolnir, but instead his own mace weapon that looks similar to Thor's. I feel like, you know, Eric Masterson has also been gone for a long time. Definitely not gonna see him anytime soon, but just it's good to remember. Thunderstrike existed and he was cool. Next up, this is another character who I feel like has been gone for a very long time indeed. I feel like Machine Man would actually be a really interesting hero to have return in the comics in the modern age. Machine Man, also known as X-51, was a robot who was made as part of an experiment to see if robots could basically behave like humans. Sound familiar? While the experiment overall failed, X-51 did seem capable of behaving and thinking like a human himself due to the fact that he was raised like a human, a theory his creator, Aaron Stack, was attempting to test. So X-51 was like the one outlier of the batch. X-51 would take up the name Aaron Stack in honor of his creator, continuing to work towards Stack's dream of robot and human coexistence. He goes on a few adventures and even becomes an Avenger, but eventually leaves Earth to go off with the Celestials. And I'm pretty sure we've never seen him again. So, speaking of people that go off to space and do cool space things, Moondragon is a hero who doesn't get as much love from the Avengers in the comics. Now, sure, she's been around on the Guardians of the Galaxy team, but why not on the Avengers? For Guardians, she was given some love in Volume 6, but was also later believed dead in that same volume. Although more recently, it's actually been revealed that she's still alive in the 2024 annual. But while she's been doing okay in the comics for the Guardians, there is another area that I feel like she was kind of snubbed in. Other than the Avengers, I just also really wanted her to be on the Guardians of the Galaxy team in the MCU. I was really hoping in Volume 3 we'd get a Moondragon appearance. Sadly though, that never happened. I just really wanted Drax to reconnect with Moondragon in the films and learn that his daughter was still alive in spirit at least, and have them reconnect, but no, that never happened. I mean, Drax still got to unlock his most dad form though, so I'm still cool with that and ultimately happy for him. I still think he got a pretty good ending, but come on, that would have been awesome, wouldn't it? Come on, James Gunn. I really wanted Moondragon. I would be Moondragon if someone wanted. I would shave my head to be Moondragon. That's how much I love her. Moondragon's great. Heather Douglas, underrated. Look, here's the thing. I love Laura and I just think she got snubbed by the Avengers. If you've seen my video on X-23 and her complete history here on the channel, then you know that she is a character who pretty much has ties to all major players in the Marvel Universe. And if you haven't seen that video, you should go check it out because it's super cool and I put a lot of work into it. Now, when it comes to Laura and all of her connections, this of course includes the Avengers. There was a time when she left the X-Men to find her place in the world, and part of that trip kind of involved joining the Avengers team. Well, not the mainstay team, although she has acted as an ally to the main Avengers team before. Laura was actually recruited to the Avengers Academy. But you know what? We don't talk about Avengers Academy enough, so I'm gonna include Laura on this list. While she does manage to get a lot thrown her way over in the X-Men world, I feel like Laura's time with and connection to the Avengers has been somewhat forgotten in recent years and downplayed. Personally, I feel like she may even fit better on the Avengers team as opposed to the X-Men. That might be a hot take, but there it is. And let's be real, while we did try to heal wounds after Avengers vs. X-Men, there's still a lot of work to do in regards to those two teams really coming together, and X-23 could be a part of that continued healing. Or at least a version of X-23. I think she might still be, she's out right now. She's down for the count. We have young X-23 though, but older X-23. You know what I mean. Speaking of Avengers Academy, Reptile is super underrated. He's such a fun character. He has not appeared either on the main Avengers team, but was recruited to Avengers Academy. Man, I just really want to see the Avengers Academy team get to like be Avengers together. Isn't that the whole point of Avengers Academy, to train people up to be Avengers? I feel like so few of them become Avengers. I would love it even just for a few issues. Even if it was like a guest appearance, I'd really like it. I just think it would be really cool. Reptile is basically like a dinosaur superhero. He isn't specifically a dinosaur, but he can basically modify his body or his power set based on those of prehistoric creatures. He can give himself wings, gain super strength, or even enhance his senses. I don't know what it is for me and animal characters, but we're continuing that theme with our next hero on our list. Honestly, I feel like Tigra is a very well-loved character among the fans, and she just doesn't get much love in the comics, at least not in regards to her place on the Avengers team. Now, if you're a Tigra fan, you can find her in Vengeance of the Moon Knight right now, where she's basically carrying on like Mark's work, fighting as a hero, but when it comes to her working with the Avengers, that hasn't happened for some time. Quite some time. Tigra was featured prominently as a member of the team back in the 80s, so if you remember those days, then yay, but for those that love Tigra but weren't around in the 80s, sad. How is it that we got a She-Hulk show and there was no Hellcat in there? Yeah, I'm continuing with the cat theme, friends. That honestly seems criminal to me. Hellcat is Patsy Walker. She was a member of the Avengers back in the 1970s. Most recently, she was around in the comics where she teamed up and partnered up romantically with fellow Avenger member Iron Man, aka Tony Stark. Following that, she was given her own series, but it was only a limited run, only a few issues. Limited. Not what I like to hear when I'm like, I want more of this character. What I miss are the days when Patsy was more prominently featured and actually had an ongoing series, but it feels like those days are behind us currently. Now she's less of a lead or team mainstay and more of just like a straight up supporting role. And even then, we couldn't get her in a supporting role in the live action She-Hulk. That just tells you how far she's fallen from the stars. This next hero might be a little bit of a hot take, but I'm gonna say it. Hank Pym deserved better. I know on our part 1 for this list I talked about Janet, and don't get me wrong, I obviously love Janet Van Dyne, and I also thought that she deserved better. In fact, I put her on part 1, so clearly I think the lack of Jan we've gotten is more of an emergency than Hank, but at the same time I feel like Hank as well has had it really rough. In fact, we don't even have Hank in the comics right now as Ant-Man because he's dead. Hank went from being a brilliant scientist and Avenger to someone who was mainly known for mistreating his wife, Janet, and being super troubled. We later learned that he was undiagnosed bipolar for many years, hence all of his mood swings and trouble with his identity, and just when it seemed like Hank actually might be getting better, he instead got merged with Ultron, and through that, basically was like killed. Unfortunately, we lost him at a time when I feel like he could have truly grown and evolved even more as a character. That could have been a powerful message too. This idea that you can have a mental illness or a neurodivergence and learn to not only deal with it, but thrive with it. That your mental illness doesn't have to define you. Like, hello, that would be a super powerful message. But no, Hank doesn't get to have redemption. He just dies. Well, a lot of these characters have been people that I've known and loved throughout Avengers history. This next one is one that I kind of just found out about, and I'm very perplexed that it's taken me this long. How am I just learning about Stingray now? Where has this character been all my life? I thought when it came to Marvel, Namor was the main character we had for the seas, and of course this is true. He is generally who people think of when they think Marvel-based oceanic hero or anti-hero, but we shouldn't only think of him because guess what? We have Stingray! Stingray is acclaimed oceanographer and engineer Walter Newell. When I was a kid, I actually wanted to be a marine biologist, fun fact about me. I also wanted to be a singer, but marine biologist was honestly my first love before I even wanted to be a singer or performer in any way. Yeah, I was kind of a weird kid. So a guy who is an oceanographer studying the oceans and who also helps fight to protect them is my hero. Stingray would go on to join the Avengers through basically becoming their landlord? I'm not kidding. He had a hydro base that he maintained with his wife and he offered it as the headquarters to the Avengers. It would go on to become Avengers Island. At one point the mansion was trashed and they basically ended up moving to the hydro base, which like I said, then we come to know as Avengers Island. Stingray has also acted as an ally to Namor and the two have teamed up together and been friends for some time, until more recently when Namor apparently forgot all about that friendship and then tried to kill Walter by getting some sharks to attack him. Rude, Namor. Rude. Earth, air, water, fire. This is a character who has learned to master them all. No, we're not talking about the Avatar, we are talking about the Inhuman hero, Crystal. Crystal is one of the best heroes we have when it comes to someone who can bend the elements to her will. But does she get any love? No. People know Storm, and of course Storm is awesome. People know Iceman, also an awesome character, but what about Crystal? In general, I feel like the Inhumans do not get enough love, but Crystal for me is really up there when it comes to some of the coolest Inhumans we have, both in terms of her abilities and her origin. She's basically an Inhuman princess who is often shown to want to explore the outside world, the world outside Atalan. This is how she runs into the Fantastic Four, and then ends up joining their team temporarily, and she also ends up running into the Earth's mightiest heroes, the Avengers, and also ends up joining them for a time. I just love a runaway princess story, what can I say? I think it's just such a fun story.
Number 10 is Atom Smasher. No, I'm not talking about Atom Smasher from cyberpunk lore. I'm talking about the lesser known Atom Smasher, as in the atomic particle smasher, aka Robert Julian Rothstein, who was a big deal in the DC world, literally, not figuratively. Picture this, he's a hero who could grow super big, towering over trees, and packing a punch that could knock anybody out. Now, despite his mega size and power, he didn't get the spotlight he deserved in many big storylines. But there was one storyline where he did in fact prove himself. Atom Smasher did something huge, literally and figuratively this time, by kicking a tyrant out of power in Kahndaq. Leading a team of rebel do-gooders, he flexed his muscles, showing bravery and fought for what he thought was right. His powers on display played a big role in taking down the bad guys, and his actions reshaped the DC universe by returning control to the people of Kahndaq. Atom Smasher might not have been in the headlines all the time, but when he stepped up, he changed the game for the better. At number 9 is Saturn Girl. Saturn Girl is a seriously underrated superhero in the DC universe. She's all about telepathy, a superpower that lets her read minds and communicate without even speaking. But despite her awesome abilities, she's often overlooked, just like the rest of her crew, the Legion of Superheroes. The team doesn't always get the credit it deserves, always living in the shadow of bigger superhero groups like the Justice League or Justice Society of America. But here's the kicker, Saturn Girl once saved the entire timeline. Yeah, you heard that right. A girl who just communicates with her thoughts saved the multiverse. She used her mind mojo to gather every Legion member across different universes to take down the big bad guy, the Time Trapper. Without her, who knows what kind of chaos would have happened. Saturn Girl might not be as famous as Superman or Wonder Woman, but her brain power packs a serious punch when it's used correctly. She's a legend in her own right, even if not everybody knows about it. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support Top 10 Nerd by pressing like, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that notification bell. It helps the video get pushed out to more people, and I would really appreciate it, so do that. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 8, we have Mr. Terrific. Michael Holt, also known as Mr. Terrific, doesn't just juggle lasers like they're nothing. I mean, this guy's got brains and brawn. He's all about saving the day and helping people out, but he doesn't get the credit he deserves. This dude's a top-notch genius and can do some seriously amazing things with his smarts. I'm talking about being the big shot in the Justice Society of America and being labeled as the smartest member ever. Mr. Terrific isn't just book smart though, he's a wizard with tech too. He pulled off some mind-blowing stuff against Brother Eye and saved Selena Kyle's life by putting her heart right where it belonged. Bottom line, Mr. Terrific doesn't always get the spotlight often, but when he does, it's because he's using that epic brain of his to pull off some seriously epic moves. At number 7, The Question. Question is an often overlooked figure, especially the version portrayed by Renee Montoya. Renee, a skilled detective, swaps the comfort of accolades for the shadows of vigilantism, seeking to create genuine change. Despite her remarkable career, the Question remains in obscurity, deprived of the rightful recognition she deserves. Not all strength comes from overt displays of power, as we've just seen. Renee embodies the strength through resilience. After grappling with the toll of her superhero life on her mental well-being, she'd stepped away from the role. But when duty called, she did not hesitate to don the Question's identity once more. Her willingness to confront personal struggles and yet rise to the challenge when needed showcases a different kind of fortitude. Her story emphasizes that strength isn't just about physical prowess. It's about determination to confront the inner battles heroes and still stepped up to protect others when the call comes. At number 6, Vixen's one cool hero you might not have heard much about. She's in the Justice League, but hasn't got much attention as some other big names. What makes her special is how she taps into the powers of animals, like she channels their abilities thanks to this totem passed down through generations. Any animal she could think of, bam, she can manifest the strength of a lion or the speed of a cheetah, and so on and so forth. The latest Vixen, Marie McCabe, has done some seriously awesome stuff. Like, she became the boss of the Justice League. Leading the top squad of superheroes is kind of a big deal. Only a handful of heroes have ever done that, and like their names are Batman and Batman. And to get the thumbs up from Batman himself to take charge is pretty massive. It shows that she's not just tough, but smart and reliable too. It's like being the team captain of an all-star team. A ton of pressure, but also a big honor. At number 5 is Ragman. Ragman is seriously underrated in the DC universe. He's not in the spotlight much, but he is seriously powerful. Rory Reagan, the guy inside the Ragman suit, can control it like it's an extension of himself. This suit's not just a fashion statement, it's also a serious weapon. It protects Reagan and also kicks some serious bad guy butt. His suit's got this cool power that can absorb the souls of evil people. Pretty heavy stuff. Ragman isn't afraid to take on big bad demons. He once faced a whole fleet of demons and saved the earth, which is definitely no small feat. Even though he did take a beating, he came out on top and really showed how brave and heroic he is. DC should totally give this guy more screen time, as he deserves to be up there with the big leagues like Superman and Wonder Woman. At number 4 is Spoiler. There's no spoilers, don't worry guys. The hero's name is Spoiler. Also known as Stephanie Brown, she might not ring a bell as loud as other big names in the Bat family, but she is a superhero worth knowing about. She didn't just follow in somebody else's footsteps, as she carved her own path. As Spoiler, she stepped up big time, especially when facing off against a colossal baddie named Brother Eye. Now this villain here is no joke, like big league Justice level big. But Stephanie wasn't afraid to take him head on. When Brother Eye tried to mess things up using a different timeline, Stephanie didn't just freak out. Instead, she used that timeline to her advantage. Brought heroes from that time to help her out. And if it weren't for her guts and quick thinking, things in the DC world might have turned out totally different. The next time you hear about Bat Family superheroes, don't forget to give some props to Stephanie Brown, aka Spoiler, because she's a real unsung hero in the DC universe. At number 3 is Killer Frost. Killin Snow, known as Killer Frost, doesn't totally get the spotlight she deserves, although she is kind of heavily featured on this channel. Initially seen as a bad guy, she's been trying hard to change that image. Imagine from going from total baddie to trying to do the good stuff. It's a massive leap. Killer Frost wasn't just chilling out, pun intended, as a villain. She had to battle her own past and nature to become a hero. Now what's cool about her is the determination she showed. It's like fighting against the odds, clawing her way out of the dark side. The transformation from an icy antagonist to a legit Justice League member is pretty huge, and not everybody gets that chance. So yeah, Killer Frost might not be as famous, but she's definitely earned her stripes. She's proof that even the chilliest hearts can thaw out for the better. At number 2 is the Human Target. Christopher Chance, better known as Human Target, is a hero in the shadows of DC Comics. His superpower? Transforming into anybody to safeguard important folks. He also has awesome detective skills, which make him a top-notch problem solver. But what makes him truly stand out is his selflessness. He once shielded Bruce Wayne from Deadshot's deadly aim. But he didn't just save the day, he shielded Batman's secret identity too, using his face-swapping talents. Human Target's heroics go unnoticed. He's like this secret guardian angel for all the big shots, and yet few ever give him the applause he deserves. Imagine having the guts to confront a villain like Deadshot, risking your own life just to keep others safe. It's these unsung heroes like Human Target who deserve a spot in the limelight. And coming in at number 1 is Batwing. Luke Fox, as Batwing in DC Comics, is seriously underrated. Now he's one of those heroes who doesn't get enough credit because, well, I mean, Batman's got this big shadow covering everybody else in Gotham. But Luke, he's no sidekick, you guys. He's a force to be reckoned with. There was one time in the comics when Gotham was about to get nuked by the League of Assassins. Now Luke didn't just sit around twiddling his thumbs. No, he got right in the thick of it. I mean, sure, he got nabbed alongside Azrael, but that didn't stop him. After busting out, he used his smarts to defuse the bomb that would have wiped out all of Gotham. It's definitely top-tier hero stuff. It's a shame, really, that more folks don't really give Batwing the credit he deserves, given that, you know, he's hardly the most unique Bat character in all of DC. Yet, he is super awesome. He's not just another guy in a cool bat suit. he's got the brains, the guts, and the will to save the day when it counts the most. That pretty much wraps it up for today's video. As always, if there's an underrated hero in the DC universe that should have been included in this list, please feel free to let me know down in the comments, and hopefully your suggestions will be included in the next iteration of this list.
Number 10, Kang the Conqueror. While the future of Kang in the MCU is extremely uncertain with Jonathan Majors being removed from future projects, the fact remains that in the comics, Kang is an extremely underappreciated villain. This is likely because not as many modern comics fans know how deadly Kang can be. If you are more a fan of the MCU, or if you are more of a modern day comic book collector and reader, you might have missed out on some of Kang's most epic stories and most deadly moves when it comes to him facing the Avengers. Although I will say that comics have been hinting at his power in recent years, if you know where to look. Kang is typically an Avengers villain. While he might look ridiculous on paper, many of us comic book fans know to respect him, as Kang is a master of time who has defeated an insane number of Avengers across the multiverse. I'm not as worried for the character's future in the MCU, because the other cool thing about Kang is that he's a time traveler, and as a result, he has many different looks and identities through the years. So it's possible that he could actually be anyone hiding in disguise, laying in wait for the right moment to reveal himself and strike. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9, the Lizard. The Lizard is a villain who often gets overlooked when it comes to Spider-Man fans. Why is this? Because not many people know just how dark and deadly the Lizard can be, and perhaps because the Lizard's alter ego, Curt Connors, is known for being a good man and a scientist. But that doesn't mean there isn't darkness lurking beneath the surface, even with as well-intentioned a man as Connors. And even without any potential darkness within Connors, the Lizard should be dark enough to persuade readers to be intimidated by him and respect him. You also have to think of how terrifying it must be for Connors' consciousness to exist within the Lizard when the creature is completely unleashed and fully in control. It's a complete lack of control in a way that is probably super terrifying for Curt. Number 8, Hunter in the Darkness. The Hunter in the Darkness is an interesting character, and one that honestly we do not talk enough about on Top 10 Nerd. And also super complex, to be honest. Villain, sometimes a bit of an anti-hero or an ally to heroes. While Wolverine did once free the werewolf-like being from a trap years ago, the Hunters still remain an adversary of Wolverine. It has been implied in the comics that there is a sense of camaraderie between the two at times. When we first met the Hunter in Darkness, it was made to seem like, and in fact some characters in the issue did think, that the Hunter was actually a more feral version of Logan. Number 7, Taskmaster. Everyone knows that Anthony Masters is insane when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. He has photographic reflexes, which allow him to learn any fight move or style just by observing or battling against someone, which makes him pretty hard to beat if you don't have some kind of crazy superpower set. Taskmaster might not be on anyone's A-list, but he sure has fought a ton of well-loved superheroes, including Moon Knight. Moon Knight himself doesn't have any crazy superpowers, but he does have a Batman-like ability to strike fear into the hearts of almost all of his opponents, no matter how skilled they are, which was really the only thing that made it possible for him to defeat Tony here. Number 6, Chameleon. Chameleon is definitely a hero who deserves more love and more respect, or at least more disdain if you love to hate the greatest villains. He was the first villain that Spider-Man ever faced in his own series. A lot of people don't think of shapeshifters or masters of disguise first when it comes to power levels, but the reality is someone who is really good at disguising themselves as other people can be one of the most deadly and unstoppable villains around. Look at what Mystique managed to do only a few years ago in X-Men's Inferno, or Chameleon in Devil's Reign. Not only is Chameleon great at creating chaos and hurting others by disguising himself as other people, but he also is pretty good at hatching his own plans as well. Number 5, Mystique. Mystique is someone who isn't particularly, or at least outwardly, powerful when it comes to what she's capable of and her power set, and for this reason many people have taken to underestimating her abilities. Here's why I would advise against that. 2021's Inferno issue number 4. In the Inferno series, it's revealed that while Mystique tried to play by Krakoa's rules, when she learned she wasn't going to get what she wanted from Magneto and Professor X, no matter what she did in the name of the Mutant Nation, she decided to take matters into her own hands, as Mystique so often does. I mean, that's why we love her, right? Disguising herself as as many different people, she was able to easily ensure that Destiny was in fact resurrected, against the wishes of the heads of the Quiet Council. She also put into motion plans to make sure that Destiny would garner a spot on the Quiet Council, and then she was almost successful in enacting revenge on Moira X for keeping her love, Destiny, from her for so long. Mystique here proves that while her power set may have become OP over the years, it's still really her mind and her sense of cunning that makes her honestly so dangerous. Number 4, Mysterio. Another villain that often gets dismissed when it comes to Spider-Man's rogues gallery is Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain that is all smoke and mirrors and illusions, which makes a lot of folks consider him to be a not so real threat. Still, in the cinematic take on the character, we saw Mysterio almost completely fool the entire world. Or well, even being defeated, he still kind of did. His plan here was to convince everyone he was a hero and win them over to his side, and even despite seemingly dying, I'm still not convinced, he actually still managed to succeed somewhat. In the Old Man Logan universe, Mysterio is also the one behind defeating all of the X-Men by tricking Wolverine into thinking all of his friends were really supervillains, thereby getting him to kill the entire X-Men team and school himself. Yikes. Number 3, Destiny. Destiny is one of those villains that is severely underrated. I mean, most people don't even think of her when they think about Marvel villains. Even when they think about X-Men villains, she doesn't happen to be one of the folks that first comes to your mind. And yet she is one of the most powerful out there, despite being very squishy, honestly. Even dead, she is somewhat of a threat in the comics due to her previously recorded premonitions. You see, Destiny is the lover of Mystique, and her mutant power is that she can see into the future. The more likely a future becomes, the more she can see that future, and her visions have often been known to be quite accurate. We don't have a lot of characters who can see into the future, and most of them tend to be on the hero side of things that do have that power, so it's interesting to see a villain with such rarely seen powers, but especially when you consider, her alignment as a villain. Number 2, Madeline Pryor. Of course, I have to include the Goblin Queen. You guys know how much I love her. Anytime I do a list like this, she's one of the first people that comes to my mind, and we gotta talk about her. Madeline Pryor is a woman who seems to easily be forgotten and shelved, which is surprising considering how great of a threat she posed in the original Inferno story. Currently in the comics, Madeline Pryor is making a comeback, even going on to lead her own X-Men team, nicknamed the Dark X-Men editorially. Madeline Pryor has threatened the entire world with her dark rituals and demon pacts before, and though often forgotten, she really shouldn't be, considering just how dangerous and how powerful she is. Number 1, the Maker. The Maker is the alternate version of Reed Richards. I've always felt that Richards actually might make a better villain than a hero, and the Maker seems to have been this thought made manifest, living proof of it being so. The Maker initially started out as a hero, leader of the team known as the Fantastic Four. However, in the Ultimate Universe where he hails from, the original Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, his and Sue's future of marital bliss was not as guaranteed. And in fact, after the tragedy of Ultimatum and Sue Storm turning down his marriage proposal, Richards got a different perspective on life, which inevitably resulted in him becoming a villain. In this universe, Reed had a rough childhood, and part of where his villainy started was in turning on his own family. A family that had honestly mistreated him for years. Yeah, in this reality, Reed commits patricide and matricide to get back at his parents. And that's just the beginning of his story as a villain. Extremely counter to his Earth 616 alternate.
At number 10 is Tigra, a superhero who's basically a giant talking cat. Tiger. Personally, I'm a dog person, so it's easy to see why Tigra would be so underestimated. After all, she's hardly the most well-known feline superhero out there. Nevertheless, she's got all the cool feline powers, razor-sharp claws, agility like you wouldn't believe, and a tail that's more than just for show. All pretty generic, but there's one moment in the comics that truly made her stand out. See, Tigra once took down a Skrull who had all the powers of the Fantastic Four combined. Yeah, we're talking about a Skrull with stretchy abilities, fire powers, rock-hard strength, and invisibility. Like, forget the Fantastic Four, this dude was fantastic on his ones. And Tigra, she outsmarted and outpaced this Super Skrull in a face-off. Even when the Skrull had a speed boost from the Human Torch's fire, Tigra showed that she's the real speed demon here. Now, even though Tigra doesn't always hog the spotlight like some of the other big names in the Marvel Universe, she's still an Avenger, so while Tigra might not be on everyone's superhero lunchbox, she's definitely got the skills and the guts to hang out with Earth's mightiest heroes. At number 9 is Sunspot. Roberto da Costa, aka Sunspot, isn't your typical superhero. Not only does he have the whole rich guy thing going for him, but his powers are seriously cool too. He's basically a human solar panel able to absorb energy and turn it into super strength. Now, the moment when he faced off against the Red Hulk was legendary. I mean, going toe-to-toe with a Hulk takes some serious guts. Sunspot's determination and his solar-powered might were on full display here. He launched a punch so strong, it actually drew blood from the Red Hulk. That's like leaving a dent in a brick wall by punching it. It's basically unheard of. Now, what makes him even cooler is the dude typically holds back from unleashing his full fury. In fact, he barely ever needs to throw punches at all. Sunspot usually relies on his charisma and brains instead of flaunting his powers. But when he does decide to unleash that solar strength, watch out, because there's a lot more to him than just his hefty bank account. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Reptile. Reptile is a hero with some seriously cool but kind of underrated powers, transforming into dinosaurs. Like, you're in a fight and bam, you can morph into a T-Rex or a raptor, and that's pretty much Reptile's shtick, and it's super awesome. But what's even cooler is that it's gonna take a lot more than a flimsy extinction rock from space to take this dude down. Like, you thought meteors were scary? Try surviving a nuclear blast. Yeah, you heard that right. Apparently, that's where Reptile really shines. At Avengers Arena number 18, this guy survives a direct nuclear explosion. He walks out of it without a scratch, no radiation poisoning, it's not something that just any superhero can boast about. Like, even big shots like Namor were impressed. But handling those dino forms is also quite tricky business. He risks losing control every time he switches into a dinosaur, which adds a hefty dose of risk to his superhero game. So while Reptile might not be headlining Marvel movies or comics, surviving a nuclear blast speaks volumes about his toughness. I mean, turning into dinos might not be as flashy as shooting lasers, let's say, but hey, he's got a serious resilience. Definitely a hero worth giving some more credit to. At number 7 is Speedball. You know, Speedball might not be the first hero that comes to mind when you think of Marvel track stars, but this guy has an incredible story worth talking about. See, back in the day, he was part of the New Warriors, a team that wasn't exactly grabbing the headlines like the Avengers or the X-Men. In fact, his team ended up becoming a bit satirical, with its final incarnation taking the form of a superheroed reality show, which doesn't quite sound so serious. But here's the thing, leading up to Marvel's Civil War, things got super serious for Speedball. His team faced off against this bad guy named Nitro, and let's just say they underestimated him big time, seeing as they may have been a bit more occupied with their show's ratings than actually taking down the bad guy, which was a major mistake. Nitro set off this insane explosion in Stamford that wiped out the entire city and everybody on the scene except for Speedball. Can you imagine? 600 people gone in a blink of an eye, including all of Speedball's superpowered pals. But this guy, his powers that involve bouncing around and soaking up energy, somehow managed to survive. At number 6 is Mimic. This guy's got the wild mutant ability called Power Mimicry, which means he can copy the abilities of not 1, not 2, but up to 5 different superhumans all at once. It's like having a superpower sampler platter. And it gets even crazier. Mimic isn't limited to just mutant abilities, because he could also mimic non-mutant powers like those of the Fantastic Four. Plus, after hanging out with these superpowered folks for a while, he can consciously switch up and choose which abilities to use on command. In Exiles number 14, Namor the Submariner is on a conquest to claim Latveria, and who steps up? None other than Mimic himself. And these two heavyweights go at it for nearly an hour, and ultimately, Mimic wins, not only taking down Namor, but a whole army of Doombots all by himself. Some serious superhero muscle right there. As a member of an alternate universe Exiles team from Earth 12, he doesn't nearly get the same recognition as Earth 616 heroes, but it doesn't make him any less powerful. At number 5 is Nova. Sam Alexander is the second incarnation of Nova, taking up after his father after discovering the Nova helmet and using its powers to protect the galaxy. At face value, he sounds kind of generic, especially with his supernova strength and speed, especially since he's overshadowed by his dad so often. But Nova is arguably much more powerful because the kid just can't seem to catch a break. In the final issues of Avengers vs. X-Men, he goes toe-to-toe with Cyclops. And if you think that's impressive, wait till I tell you that Cyclops was imbued with the Defenestrator. And believe it or not, this kid freaking won. That's like a David and Goliath moment right there. At number 4 is Aurora. Ever heard of Aurora? She's this awesome super fast hero with some seriously underrated powers. Sure, her twin brother Northstar gets a lot of attention, but Aurora's abilities are top notch too. In a scene from X-Men number 191, Aurora and Northstar casually destroy X-Mansion, showing off their immense powers. But when Northstar's gotta take a moment to catch his breath, Aurora just doesn't hold back and goes on the brink of wiping out the whole mutant crew single-handedly. She was a hair away from total domination. Now the thing is, she's got it all: speed, flight, and control over light, yet she's often sidelined compared to her brother. It's like everybody's sleeping on her massive potential. At number 3 is Speed. Speed, also known as Tommy Shepard, might not be on the A-list like Iron Man or Spidey, but he is seriously impressive. You see, Speed isn't just any speedster. He inherited his uncle Quicksilver's velocity, which automatically makes him one of the fastest folks in the Marvel Universe. As one of Scarlet Witch's 2 sons, he often gets overshadowed by his brother Wiccan. Now, obviously, Wiccan's powers are a lot more versatile, given that he does all things magic and Speed just kind of runs fast. But don't get it twisted, Wiccan's magic ain't got nothing on Speed's, well, speed. Why, you ask? Well, you see, Wiccan can teleport. Now, one would think that means he could outpace his brother, and that was put to the test in Young Avengers Presents number 3, where the two brothers raced against each other. Speed did the unbelievable, outpacing his teleporting brother in a race. Imagine that, outrunning somebody who can spontaneously manifest from one spot to another in an instant. That kind of speed is insane. It's moments like these where you wonder why Speed doesn't get more recognition. He's got the speed, the skills, and definitely the power to shake things up in the Marvel world. At number 2 is Tempo. You know, Tempo might not be the first superhero that pops in your mind when you think of Marvel, but trust me, she's one of the most badass time manipulators in the game. She used to hang out with the Mutant Liberation Front, rocking that iconic bullet-headed suit, but things got real interesting when she joined Krakoa. Suddenly, she had a shot at being a part of the X-Men crew, and that's when folks started noticing her. But the moment when Tempo truly proved herself came in the Marauders series. Until this point, Tempo was only known for slowing or stopping time, but here, she doesn't just stop time, she flips it like a pancake, sending time backwards by billions of years. Yeah, that's right, billions with a B. It's telling me that her first time traveling, she accomplished a feat of such magnitude that most other time travelers couldn't even dream of. This isn't your average hero. She's like the time-traveling wizard of the Marvel Universe. I mean, sure, she might not have the same spotlight as other time travelers like Kang, but Tempo is proving herself to be a powerhouse you definitely don't want to underestimate. At number 1 is Hellion. Imagine facing off against one of the toughest superheroes out there, the Hulk. Yeah, Sunspot isn't the only one who stood up against the giant. Enter this dude. Despite being a young hero, he pulled off something insanely epic. In a comic called World War Hulk X-Men number 1, he did the unthinkable. Using his telekinetic powers, he locked the Hulk's fist, giving his team a chance to regroup for battle. Yeah, you heard me right, y'all. A teenager managed to hold back the mighty Hulk's fists with his mind. Now, obviously that didn't last forever, but just managing to hold back the strongest force in the multiverse? Come on now, this guy should be a superstar. Now, he might not be as famous as some other Marvel heroes, but he's proven he's got some serious skills. Surviving tough situations and facing off against baddies like the Hulk shows he's definitely one to watch in the underrated superhero league.
Coming in at number 10 is Ace the Bat Hound. Of all the Bat family pets, Alfred the Cat, Bat Cow, Titus, Ace came first, and he wasn't just another pet of Damian Wayne. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I'm just saying. Now, Ace seems to be a name shared by many dogs who have worked with Bruce Wayne and his companions. When he first appeared in Batman number 462 in May of 1991, Ace was a shepherd type doggo, and that's been the most popular breed for Ace the Bat Hound, usually a German shepherd. But he was also a mastiff for a long while as well, with no real explanation. The most recent and popular German shepherd Ace the Bat Hound was an attack dog for the Joker and was not treated very well. Luckily, this very good boy was taken in by Alfred and the Bat family, and he became the bestest Bat boy ever. Yes, he did. Number 9, Batwoman. There have been a few different Batwomen over the years, but the one who will always stick in most fans' minds would have to be Kate Kane. Now, just to be clear, this is Batwoman we are talking about and not Batgirl. As a child of military parents, Kate has a soldier's mentality which just adds to her amazing fighting skills. She has cultivated over the years, not to mention a deep, intense desire to be the best she can be always. She received training from the Green Berets, Navy SEALs, and Special Air Service, and the villain Shadow also helped to train her to become a better hero. Following Batman's disappearance after the Infinite Crisis, Kate Kane assumed the Batwoman mantle and stepped in to become Gotham's protector. Kate has even displayed some superpowers. At one point, an injury left her able to detect electromagnetic fields, and in the Future Imperfect storyline, she even became a vampire. Number 8, Bluebird. I think Bluebird, or Harper Row, is looked over quite a bit when we talk about the Bat family, and honestly, it's kind of understandable. She did actually step down from her hero mantle in order to get her electrical engineering skills accredited, which honestly, that's the most real-world reason for someone to stop being a hero. But it was probably the smart thing to do, because Harper Row here is a whiz with electronics and electrical engineering. She's used her natural aptitude to help both her and her brother survive, as well as assisting Batman multiple times without him asking, improving upon some of his tech and helping out Red Robin on a few occasions using her homemade advanced tools. She's actually very cool, in my humble opinion, in her brief time being around. Number 7, Duke Thomas. Now I feel like this might bother a few people, but honestly, this young blood still has to prove himself in my eyes. There is absolutely no doubt he is powerful. As one of the only metahumans on the Bat family roster, he's already naturally a cut above many others, but there are so many more that could bring him down without even needing superpowers. Powers don't always equal superiority on this family. Speaking of his powers though, Duke wields Ghost Vision, which he uses to perceive people and moments in the past and in the future. He also wields a cosmic awareness that extends into other realities and has even used the ability to travel across dimensions by light and shadow. Now he originally started as part of the We Are Robin movement, but left and ended up making it on his own. Batman then took him in, helped train him, and then sent him out to be a part of the new Outsiders team alongside Black Lightning. Number 6, Lucius Fox. There are a few people without which Bruce Wayne would not be where he is or be able to do the things that he does. Among this very select group would be Lucius Fox. First appearing in 1979, Lucius was the second in command at Wayne Enterprises. He is an incredibly adept businessman known throughout the world, but he is also, privately, Bruce Wayne's business manager, financial executive, and, not to mention, armorer. And if that weren't enough, when Bruce Wayne decided to resign, Lucius was promoted to CEO of Wayne Enterprises and the Wayne Foundation. His power definitely comes from the power of the company, his connection to Bruce, his sons, Luke and Jace, who is not a member of the Bat family, surprisingly, and he also does have a military background, so there is that if he's ever in like a little scuffle. It turns out that in DC, power isn't only about how big your muscles are. Number 5, Batwing. Luke Fox is not the first Batwing, but for a lot of us, he is definitely the coolest one. Being the son of Lucius Fox, Luke is a tech genius, graduating a year early with 2 degrees from MIT. His tech prowess really aids him as he has an incredibly advanced suit of armor that does a lot. For example, the suit has a full faceplate, retractable cape, and an interior skin that monitors vital signs and enacts first aid, like hardening around broken bones to hold the bone in place and administering painkillers. It gives Luke a form of invisibility, detective vision, holograms, it can access the GCPD computers, features gyroscopic assist, a terrain map, shock charges, a kinetic patch, anti-personnel plates, and just so much more. This is on top of Luke's training as an MMA fighter before his Batman training. Unfortunately, he just hasn't received a chance to shine in the spotlight yet and primarily works as a supporting character in most Bat family storylines. Number 4, Stephanie Brown. I feel like there are a lot of mixed feelings on Stephanie Brown out there. She has had an interesting history as a member of the Bat family. Originally, Stephanie fought against her father, the villain Cluemaster, under the vigilante name Spoiler. She would usually fight alongside Tim Drake Robin, and they had a bit of a relationship going on the side. Now, Batman eventually trained her up some, and when Tim was forced to step down, thanks to his own father, Stephanie even took up the title of Robin. But this was pretty short-lived, as she actually did not make a very good Robin, constantly disobeying orders and pursuing criminals on her own, which eventually led to her downfall. She ended up in the hospital, and it was really questionable if she would even pull through. Luckily though, she did survive and even went on to succeed Cassandra Cain, becoming the 3rd Batgirl. Now, the two of them, Cassandra and Stephanie, are the duo known as the Batgirls. Number 3, Huntress. Like a lot of the Bat family superheroes that we have already talked about, there have been a few versions of Huntress. The original was Helena Wayne, the daughter of both Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, and that character was loved. Unfortunately though, that character belongs to what is known as Earth 2, which is essentially the world of the original DC heroes, but she has not remained the Prime Earth's Huntress. Instead, we now have Helena Bartonelli. Well, sort of. We also have a Helena Wayne, but she's from an alternate future of Prime Earth. Are you confused? Cause so am I. Let's just talk about Bartonelli. The only surviving member of the Bartonelli crime family, Helena has dedicated her life to a vendetta on crime after her family was wiped out by being a part of said crime. She was actually incredibly ruthless, very much willing to take the lives of criminals, which brought her and Batman to odds on a few occasions. But with that famous determination, Batman was eventually able to sway her way of thinking just a tiny bit. She was also done really well in the Birds of Prey movie, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. Number 2, Azrael. Another hero title with multiple bearers. This time though, it's a little different. The title of Azrael belongs to the chosen warrior of the Sacred Order of St. Dumas, cloned and enhanced, subconsciously trained and conditioned, and raised to be a perfect soldier. The most famous, and the one I'm going to talk about today, is John Paul Valley. Once he became Azrael, Valley had encountered both Bruce and Alfred in Switzerland, saving them and actually abandoning his own order for Bruce Wayne's moral values, and he went back to Gotham with both of them. He impressed Bruce Wayne so much within his time that when Bruce eventually had his back broken by Bane, it was Valley who Bruce chose to continue the Batman name. Fortunately, this didn't go too well, as he lost his grip on reality and fell from grace. But he is an incredibly cool and capable character who has arguably gotten much better on the more recent Prime Earth. Number 1, Ghostmaker. Minkoa Khan, Ghostmaker, is essentially Bruce Wayne's rival from his formative years into becoming Batman. Kind of like how in Pokemon games you always have a rival who you hate but kind of respect because they always challenge you and help you improve. Ghostmaker trained with a large number of the same mentors that taught Bruce Wayne, and it's arguable that Ghostmaker is actually equal to Batman. The difference between the two is mainly in ideologies. For starters, Ghostmaker is kind of a psychopath. Bruce Wayne is not exactly psychologically sound, but he has a strong moral code, whereas Ghostmaker fights crime as if it's a kind of sport, and he has absolutely zero qualms with taking someone permanently out of the picture. Operating mostly in Southeast Asia, he constantly tried to get Bruce to see things from his point of view, which eventually led the two to agree to just stay out of each other's way. This guy is very much rated, but for most fans of Batman, learning about Ghostmaker will come as a surprise.
Number 10, Dupe. Dupe is one of the X-Men who is known for being pretty ridiculous, and as such, a lot of people do not take Dupe seriously at all, which also extends to Dupe's power levels. However, I would argue that Dupe is actually one of the most powerful X-Men ever, who is simply grossly underrated due to his nonsensical appearance and depiction. Dupe has powers that allow him to influence the emotions of others, perform magic, resurrect, travel in the liminal space between comic book panels, shatter the fourth wall as he pleases, and honestly, so much more. I think perhaps this is the reason, in fact, that he doesn't appear as often in the comics, and therefore isn't as appreciated for his powers by fans. He's just too crazy. He's just too powerful. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love it when we talk about X-Men, I know I love it, be sure that you click that subscribe button, ring that bell so you do not miss out whenever we are talking about all the X-Men goodness. Number 9, Tempest. Tempest could literally undo anyone in the blink of an eye, like she did with Matthew Malloy, who was set up to be pretty much the most powerful mutant in almost all of existence, I would say. His reality bending was honestly off the charts, and yet Tempest was able to defeat him by traveling back in time to make sure his parents never met. Ho-ho. Her ability allows her to create time bubbles in which she can control the flow of time. Her powers earned her a place on Krakoa's 5, a team created for the purpose of handling all mutant resurrections. She can slow or speed up time as much as she wants within the bubbles, and can also use her chronokinesis powers to time travel. Number 8, Juggernaut. Juggernaut, a well-known X-Men antagonist, is widely regarded as one of the most powerful characters in the comics. Even though he is not a mutant, he became a member of the X-Men team after losing most of his abilities due to a dispute with Sidorak and seeking reconciliation with his stepbrother Charles Xavier. Interestingly, Juggernaut managed to form many friendships during his time with the X-Men. When I say that Juggy is underrated, I don't necessarily mean as a powerful character. I think we all know how powerful and dangerous Juggernaut can be. I personally would not want to face him, that is for sure. But when it comes to him as a member of the X-Men, I feel like this is often overlooked, and that overall he's a somewhat underrated member of the team in terms of what he brings to it. And I don't just mean in terms of his powers. Number 7, Beast. Beast is underrated on, honestly, a lot of levels, whether we're talking about classic Beast or current Beast, but especially I feel with the current Beast that we have, that guy is downright deadly. Not only was he unable to be reined in by Wolverine, who ultimately ultimately ended up killing Beast after Beast had him become his lapdog to be sent out on some of the darkest missions of X-Force, reducing Wolverine to a mere tool used for wiping out perceived threats to Krakoa. But he also perhaps has become even more dangerous after being resurrected. Now we have multiple Beast clones who themselves are working on their own small army of Wolverine clones with the project known as Weapons of X. Number 6. Sync. Sync is only now starting to be fully appreciated by fans around the world, all thanks to his reappearance in the Krakoa era. Sync was one of the people prioritized for resurrection, as he was needed to go on a mission into the Vault where the Children of the Vault had retreated. Considering them and their evolution a threat, the Quiet Council put together a small away team to investigate what was happening inside the Vault, sending them out to basically infiltrate it. This is just what Sync, Darwin, and Laura Kinney, then known as Wolverine, currently known as Talon in the comics, were tasked to do. It's here that we got to bask in Sync's rainbow colors, saw the relationship develop between Everett himself and Laura, and where we learned that it might be possible for Sync to even sync with others who were not mutants. We'd also learn in the X-Men series that Sync had evolved to a point that he could remain synced with his fellow mutants even when outside of their range, making Sync possibly one of the most powerful mutants to just have ever existed. Number 5. Banshee. Banshee, simply put, isn't a hero we focused on here on Top 10 Nerd. I can't remember the last time I featured him on a list, and yet he kicks butt consistently in the comics. Banshee's mutant powers turn him into a siren, which oddly enough is the name for his daughter, who shares his abilities, the name that she took up for herself as an active mutant hero. Banshee can use his powers to attack his opponents, fly, see in the dark with sonar abilities, influence and persuade his opponents, and even create shields, all with the use of his amazing voice. Basically, he's like a smaller scale Black Bolt, which means that while Black Bolt, the Inhuman King, gets a ton of love in the comics and outside, other Sonic-based heroes like Banshees, Sean Cassidy tend to fall by the wayside, sadly. Number 4. Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm and likely Black Panther, who hails from the alternate reality 13729. Chimera seems to have inherited the powers of her mother, but also shares a connection to the Earth, which allows her to draw on and harness its energy. She is also a skilled tracker and can communicate telepathically with animals. I'd also assume, as she's the daughter of Storm and of T'Challa, that she is a skilled combatant as well, as while Storm is more well known for her goddess status and weather manipulation powers, she's also an extremely skilled fighter as well, and her dad would obviously be a given inspiration for her as a fighter. Black Panther is well known for his fighting prowess. Chimera may have hailed from Earth 13729, where she was a member of the X-Men, but after being displaced to Earth 616, the main comic book continuity, she also became a member of the X-Men there as well. Number 3. Angel/Archangel. Warren Worthington III is not usually folks' first pick for mutants who are their favorite among those who have belonged to the X-Men team, but it is important, I think, to acknowledge Warren's history with the mutants and consider the fact that he is a legacy member of the X-Men. Warren joined up with the very first roster of the X-Men team to have ever existed, being one of the first members to be brought together by Charles Xavier. Sure, he might have hollow bones and his powers may mostly involve just flight, but when it comes to flying, Warren has proven in the past that he is one of the best, and in his Archangel form, he is even more powerful. He is also one of the most useful mutants outside of his power set, being an extremely accomplished businessman who tends to be one of the most charismatic members of the X-Men, who since his early days has been popular with the public, helping the team's image. Number 2. Polaris. Polaris is a character who I feel like often gets overshadowed by her dad, Magneto, and yet she too is just as much, or nearly as much I'd say, of a powerhouse as he is. Polaris has had somewhat of a rough go in recent years, especially when it comes to confronting her past and moving forward towards her future. I would love to see more moments like when she joined the X-Men, where she gets her moment in the spotlight. It's well deserved, and Lorna Dane deserves to not have her character sabotaged at every single turn, like has happened to her in some of her past. She's underrated on multiple levels, both as a hero and as a character with some real depth to her. I think it would be really amazing to see her team up with her now considered adoptive sister and brother as well to fight against injustice in the world. I love all the healing we've been doing with this whole family lately, and it would be so cool to continue along that path and see where else it could take us, especially if we bring the family together as a unit. I've seen it happen a little bit in the comics, but I'd love to see more of it. Number 1. Kid Omega. Poor Kid Omega's trope initially with his appearance in the Krakoan era X-Men comics involved him constantly being taken out, as in permanently defeated. But don't let that fool you. Quentin Quire is still a psionic badass who deserves your respect. He is considered to be one of a limited few mutants who belong to the Omega level class, meaning that he has unlimited potential in terms of what he can accomplish. And while being super powerful psionically, he's also super brilliant as well, and can actually think faster and at a higher capacity than even other extremely powerful and skilled Omega level telepaths. Quentin joined up with Logan's X-Men and has been shown to be a potential future Phoenix in Wolverine and the X-Men issue number 42.
Number 10. Mantis. Mantis actually got her start in comics when she used her abilities to reform Swordsman or Jacques Duquesne, which actually got her into the Avengers. Mantis's powers and abilities are more than what you may have gathered from her film counterpart. Mantis has complete control over her entire body, which in turn gives her peak human agility, the ability to accelerate healing through force of will, and an empathic nature enabling her to communicate telepathically with and sense the emotions of others as psychic vibrations. She can also control her heart and respiratory rate and blood flow as well. Her mastery of the Kotati priest's martial arts, which focuses on the manipulation of nerve endings and pressure points, has enabled her to knock out beings as powerful as Thor, and her telepathic and empathic abilities are improved upon thanks to the two little antennae that she has coming out of her head. But it doesn't stop there though. Mantis also gained abilities when she merged with the Kotati, such as being able to communicate with both plants and animals, and survive in space in a physically solid energy form. She can transfer herself from plant life to plant life across interstellar distances or even dimensions, creating a new body from the plant life wherever she ends up. She can transmit and receive telepathic impressions, she has precognitive powers, and more recently, she can fire powerful pyrokinetic energy blasts from energy fields, communicate directly with cosmic beings such as eternity and death, and completely control her personal energies as well as her physical form. I don't want to keep talking about it anymore. Number 9. Hawkeye. Clint Barton is essentially just a regular human man, but despite that, and likely because of his abilities and talents, he is considered a power level 4 according to Nick Fury's intel, whatever that means. Those aforementioned abilities include being a master of archery in the use of regular bows, longbows, compound bows, and crossbows, with basically perfect accuracy, able to fire multiple arrows at a single target in just a few seconds, hitting multiple targets in a few quick strokes, and directly hitting small targets at the greatest of distances. But he now also has near perfect precision with any aimed or thrown weapon. He is at the peak level of human eyesight possible, is in peak athletic human condition with peak strength, endurance, and reflexes. He's an expert acrobat, tactician, and master martial artist, but just listing off his abilities isn't going to give you a proper understanding of how cool Hawkeye is. So what has he done? In Avengers Volume 3 number 14, Hawkeye was cornered by 17 marksmen and took them all down without taking a single life. And in Hawkeye Volume 4 number 1, Clint ran into a wanted criminal in a bar and took him down silently, somehow fracturing his neck with a deck of cards. I don't know. Number 8. Tigra. When Greer Nelson first came on the scene, she was just known as the Cat, and was given powers tied to her costume. But that all changed when she became Tigra, or Tigra, however you want to pronounce it. Mutating into a human-tiger hybrid in a ritual that bound her to the, quote, cat people, which while it may be a silly name, was a race of humanoid cats who were created in the Middle Ages, so cat people. Now before you laugh at her for looking silly, just know that in her tiger form, Tigra is granted some useful abilities. Her superhuman strength allows her to lift over 10 tons with her leg muscles, allowing her to perform a standing jump of 12 feet. She can run at speeds of around 70 miles per hour, has superhuman durability, agility, reflexes, and stamina, and as we all know, cats have heightened senses and like to knock things off of wherever you carefully place them. And as far as I know, the former is still the same with Tigra, whose senses are about 10 times that of a human's. Tigra's eyesight can sense the infrared portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, allowing her for night vision. She can more easily detect the movements of an opponent. Her hearing is so strong that she can detect a ball of tissue paper being dropped at a distance of 40 feet, just like every other cat, and her sense of smell is so developed she can selectively sort through odors just to track someone. Number 7. Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is one of, if not the greatest martial artist on Earth. He was trained from birth to become the ultimate warrior. He can take on multiple opponents at once and can even defeat people much more superhumanly powerful than he is. In fact, in the White Hot Room, when the Phoenix organized a tournament to pick who would be the new host, the only reason that Shang-Chi lost was because he refused to take someone's life, having him expelled from that tournament. He is particularly skilled in Chinese martial arts, but his skill branches out to many other forms of martial arts as well. In one case, he even worked with Spider-Man to create a new martial art based on Peter's powers. Shang-Chi also is able to manipulate chi energy, which he can use to enhance his strength and durability, and can even detect others based on their energy, like he did when he detected a psionically masked Jean Grey. But Shang-Chi gets a much more significant boost of power when he's using the 10 rings. He can use those rings as projectiles, manipulate their size, and use them to levitate or even fly. The rings grant the martial master superhuman strength, durability, speed, and stamina, and he can even manipulate the energies from the rings to do many other things as well. And then, just to top it all off, thanks to the other side of his heritage, Shang-Chi inherited his mother's psionic abilities to communicate with his blood relatives, even the deceased ones. Freaky. Number 6. Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart is a hero you may not have heard of, or maybe you have, I don't know. What I do know is that Jack Hart was the son of a brilliant scientist, a scientist that created the ridiculously efficient liquid sci-fi fuel called Zero Fluid. In a tragic comic book backstory, that fluid was exposed to Jack and it gave him his awesome but difficult to control abilities. Importantly, he was also part alien, with his mother hailing from the Contraxian race. Now, due to his cellular mutation that took place after his Zero Fluid exposure, Jonathan Hart is now able to produce pink concussive energy beams and blasts from his hands and body, taking up the incredibly clever name of Jack of Hearts. Jack of Hearts can use his zero energy blast to fly at speeds currently not specifically known, but he has flown halfway across the United States in 3 minutes flat, which is pretty fast. His biological structure was reformed to basically give him the superhuman starter pack abilities, but his strength has been able to lift 25 tons. He has enhanced speed, stamina, healing factor, and durability, able to withstand some pretty heavy hits and survive in the vacuum of space. He also went through another mutation which gave him the ability to think as fast as a computer can, which is really cool, and he can retain and retrieve stored information from deep recesses of his brain, which is also really cool. Number 5. Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, a former Marine and scientist turned superhero, stands as one of Marvel Comics' most formidable heavyweights. Not only does he have immense physical strength, but he also ranks among the most brilliant minds in the Marvel Universe. He's an underutilized character who happens to be one of my personal favorites. His origin story unfolds in the tumultuous 1960s amid a groundbreaking project centered on utilizing antimatter as an energy source. However, an unforeseen explosion during the experiment forever changed Adam and his close friend, Connor. The cataclysmic event transformed Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor, giving him extraordinary superhuman abilities. Embracing his powers, he assumed the mantle of the Blue Marvel, a masked hero dedicated to safeguarding the world, but tragically, Connor's fate took a darker turn as he became Anti-Man, a villain. Their epic clashes reached a climax during one unforgettable battle when the Blue Marvel's mask was torn away, revealing his identity as an African-American hero. In the racially charged climate of the 1960s America, President John F. Kennedy urged him to retire prematurely to alleviate tensions. It wasn't until decades later that he came back as a full-on superhero and kicked some serious butt in the Avengers. Number 4. Sersi. Sersi is a member of the Eternals, an evolutionary offshoot of humanity gifted with amazing powers and abilities to look after the human race through the ages, which is similar but also just a smidgen bit different from the Eternals movie counterparts. As an Eternal, Sersi's body is augmented by cosmic energy and she has total mental control over her entire molecular structure, which allows her and other Eternals to be immortal, indestructible, and invulnerable to pretty much anything. Sersi has enough strength to bench 20 tons, but thanks to her telekinesis, she can augment that to lift about 25 tons. She can also fly at around 760 miles per hour, which is, I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty dang fast. She can project cosmic energy, has telepathy that allows her to hypnotize weak-minded fools, but she can also teleport, but she hates it, and she is even able to project images from her mind, which is such a cool idea for an ability. Those are all the powers that we don't see in the Eternals movie, because arguably the ability she has the most talent in is her matter transmutation ability, which allows Sersi to transmute transmute nearly any item or being into almost whatever she wants them to be. Among the Eternals, she has the highest ranking of power with this ability, and it allows her to self-heal any injury she does actually sustain, which aren't many because she's awesome. Number 3, Luke Cage. Criminal turned unstoppable superhero is quite the feat, but Luke Cage handles that with grace, becoming a pillar of his community and even eventually becoming mayor of New York itself. Whenever I think of Luke Cage, the word unstoppable is what actually comes to mind. I just think of him as this big brick wall just standing in the way of anyone who would try to harm anyone else. Luke went through a super soldier experiment known as the Burstein process, which increased his cellular regeneration rate. This means that Luke was given a level of super strength that, with training and experience, has made him strong enough to lift 50 tons. But there have been times where he's exceeded that, and this strength lets him perform thunderclaps, leap incredible distances, and he's been able to grab onto the back of an aeroplane and force it to come to a complete stop. That is nuts. Alongside his strength, he was obviously given superhuman stamina to match with that, but most know him for his nigh invulnerability. Luke's skin, muscles, and bone tissue are about as hard as titanium steel, making him basically immune to bullets and blades. He can withstand hits of around 1 ton and blasts of 150 pounds of TNT, but those numbers wax and wane depending on the story. He has taken hits from people far stronger than himself and survived falls from 90 stories up. If Peter Parker is the heart of New York, Luke Cage is basically like the wall. Number 2, Wasp. Traditionally, the Wasp has been considered one of the less powerful members of the Avengers. Her unique abilities, which include shrinking, flight, and emitting energy blasts through her Wasp sting, are undeniably formidable, yet individually they might be classified as street level powers. In the presence of iconic figures like Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man, few anticipated that the Wasp would rise to prominence within the team's ranks. However, the Wasp defied those expectations in remarkable fashion. She achieved the distinction of becoming the first woman to lead the Avengers ever, a feat that astonished her teammates and fans alike. Her years of experience endowed her with wisdom and capabilities that far exceed the sum of her individual powers. The Wasp's mastery of her abilities, coupled with her intelligence and resourcefulness, transformed her into a formidable hero who surpassed the expectations of everyone who had ever underestimated her. And finally, in at number 1 today is Protector. Novar, also known as the Protector, is an extraterrestrial figure who carries a bit of a renegade reputation. In a remarkable display of his power, he once took down both Thor and Captain Marvel simultaneously, an impressive feat by any measure. However, it's worth noting that many readers may not be familiar with the character of the Protector, as Novar has gained more substantial recognition among fans as Marvel Boy, particularly through his involvement with the Young Avengers. Hailing from Earth 200080 as a Kree super soldier, Novar has since laid claim to the vast universe of Earth 616 as his own. His unique set of powers include, and I'm not joking, explosive fingernails, psychedelic saliva, wall crawling abilities, heightened senses, and a remarkable conscious control over various bodily functions, among other powers. Novar's prowess in combat is truly formidable, a trait that certainly captured the attention of his teammate turned lover, Hercules. In shedding his Avengers affiliation and the Protector moniker, Novar has found his true calling and thrived as a member of the Young Avengers, the West Coast Avengers, and has even transitioned into the role of an interstellar diplomat and a Guardian of the Galaxy.
At number 10, it's kind of obvious, Aquaman. One might overlook the depths of appreciation for Aquaman within the Justice League. Sure, his capability to communicate with marine life might seem pretty niche, but let's reel in the bigger picture. The oceans cover about 70% of our planet, harboring uncharted territories and mysteries. Aquaman isn't just some guy who talks to fish. He's the bridge between those two worlds, a literal middle ground between humanity and the mysterious deep. His trident isn't just a fancy fork, you guys. It controls tides, wields immense power, and symbolizes authority. I mean, just think about it. The Justice League isn't just about battling supervillains, it's also about safeguarding Earth's entire spectrum, both above and below the waves. So perhaps it's finally time we give Aquaman the recognition he deserves for his role as an unsung guardian of not just our cities, but also our oceans. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I really appreciate it. At number 9, Dr. Light. Dr. Light, no, not the villainous one. We're shining a light on Kimiyo Hoshi, the heroic version. During Crisis on Infinite Earths, Hoshi got a cosmic power-up courtesy of the Monitor. But she didn't just twiddle her thumbs after that. Oh no, she actually joined forces with John Kent's League. Fast forward to a mission with Damian Wayne where her true potential ignited. She latched onto her powers like a life buoy in the Sea of Trouble, seizing the Great Darkness's link to the Dark Army. And using her cosmic juju, she was able to keep the wonky multiverse in check. Like, imagine the multiverse like a Jenga tower on a shaky table. That's Dark Crisis for you. But thanks to Dr. Light's intervention, that tower stood up tall. At number 8 is Martian Manhunter. When it comes to the Justice League, we often find ourselves focusing on the big names like the iconic Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, but let's not forget about the underrated gem in the lineup, Mr. Martian Manhunter. John Johns, as he's known on his Mars block, boasts an impressive record. He's been a steadfast member since the League's inception, a fact that might even surprise the most dedicated fans of the superhero world. While he took a brief hiatus to deal with his own rogues gallery in Metropolis, Martian Manhunter proved his mettle when the chips were down. The Dark Army threat called him back into action alongside his super buddies, and there he stood resolute and ready. In an ultimate showdown, he, like other heroes, met his quote-unquote demise, only to triumph through the chaos, showing us that his place was never in question. John Johns, the shape-shifting, telepathic powerhouse, truly deserves a spotlight among Earth's mightiest heroes. At number 7 is John Constantine. Enter John Constantine, the unassuming yet pivotal member of the Justice League. Nestled within the DC universe, his mastery over the arcane and his sharp wit are his greatest assets. Constantine's recent exploits with the Justice League Dark demonstrates his prowess in thwarting even the most menacing of adversaries. His instrumental role in quelling Merlin's Earth-threatening Havoc showcased his resourcefulness. But it's not just about the supernatural. When the cataclysmic onslaught by Pyrrha on the multiverse unraveled, Constantine's significance truly shone. United with the League's unconventional champions, he orchestrated a daring expedition into the Starheart. This voyage unearthed the elusive ties between Pyrrha and the looming Great Darkness, unraveling a truth vital to preserving the cosmos. So without Constantine's calculated audacity, the unraveling of this intricate tapestry might have remained an unrealized endeavor. At number 6 is Detective Chimp. Detective Chimp, a seemingly unconventional member of the Justice League Dark, often flies under the radar. Nestled within DC's magical realm, Detective Chimp's inclusion might appear puzzling at first glance, yet he's a strategic asset with a rich history. Having intertwined with the Shadow Pact, he actively combated the Spectre and assumed leadership. His saga continued as he merged into the JLD, significantly contributing to toppling the enigmatic Upside Down Man. Engagements against mystical adversaries like Merlin and Xanadoth further underscore his prowess. What's remarkable is that Detective Chimp lacks innate magic. His power lies in his encyclopedic insights and deductive prowess. A nonchalant chimp on a couch with a beer might not scream hero, but this tale resonates with the essence of heroism, leveraging what you possess in unexpected ways. At number 5 is Black Canary. DC's trove of superhero houses some major players, yet few shine as brilliantly as Black Canary. Striding confidently in her signature leather jacket and fishnets, she exudes a unique aura. A formidable Justice League member, she's no stranger to clashing with villains like the Royal Flush Gang and Xanadoth. Do any of you nerds remember the Pyrrha incident? Well, it didn't end well, and thanks to Barry Allen, she returned to the fray. At number 4 is Zatanna. DC Comics is a realm brimming with Caped Crusaders and superpowered saviors, and harbors an array of mystical manipulators, none more captivatingly enigmatic than Zatanna. When the formidable Wonder Woman found herself momentarily absent, it was Zatanna who gracefully shouldered the mantle of command, guiding the Justice League Dark. Her pivotal role in orchestrating the League's standoff against the sinister Merlin can't be understated. Amidst all this arcane chaos, she deliberately relinquished control, a calculated gambit that culminated in Merlin's undoing. But this was merely the tip of her metaphysical iceberg. See, Zatanna emerged as a linchpin in the League's conquest against the formidable Xanadoth, locking horns with Pyrrha and his nefarious Dark Army. With unwavering mettle, she showcased why she deserved the crown of the League's unsung champion. Throughout all of last year, Zatanna became omnipresent, an indomitable force safeguarding the multiverse, and an unsung sentinel shaping destinies with every uttered incantation. At number 3 is Hippolyta. Hippolyta is a formidable Amazonian warrior, proud and strong. Her introduction into the Justice League as a beacon of hope and might was anticipated by many. But alas, the anticipation doesn't always translate into reality. You see, Hippolyta's presence within the League remained akin to a whisper in the tempest, overshadowed by the cosmic machinations of Perpetua and the enigmatic Batman who laughs. But Fear not, for every star has its moment to gleam. Enter Wonder Woman Historia, a tapestry woven in the loom of imagination. Within its pages, Hippolyta emerges not as a mere figure in the background, but as a central force. We traverse her ancient battles, her defiance against mighty Zeus, and her valiant struggle to emancipate women from their tormentors. In this alternate avenue, Hippolyta illuminates the narrative with deserved radiance, proving that even obscured stars can blaze anew. At number 2 is Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, a symbol of strength and justice who has been a cornerstone of the Justice League, yet her pivotal role often goes unnoticed. In 2022, her journey across the multiverse and involvement in the trial of the Amazons showcased her resilience. Stepping back from leading the Justice League Dark, she aided both the leagues against the formidable Xanadoth, and notably, her contribution in the showdown against Pyrrha and the Dark Army stuck out. Rescued by Barry Allen, she emerged in the final battle, emphasizing her unwavering commitment. Although in this series her time in the league was limited, the quality of her actions spoke volumes. Wonder Woman's return marked a turning point, spotlighting her often underrated significance in safeguarding the league and the broader universe. And at number 1 is Green Arrow. Green Arrow often finds himself lurking in the shadows of the limelight, but let's not underestimate the gravity of his contributions. So you see, 2022 was a really good year for Green Arrow. Not content with mere archery prowess, he silently bankrolled the league's operations, an unsung hero in the financial realm. When the Royal Flush King and Xanadoth posed threats, there he stood, bow drawn, ready for action. His devotion went beyond the battlefield. When Black Canary was summoned to the Hall of Heroes, uninvited was he, yet a resolute in companionship. Pyrrha's ominous Dark Army meets its match, and eventually Pyrrha's ominous Dark Army met its match as the battle ensued. Yet it was Green Arrow's sacrifice that tipped the scales, obliterating Pyrrha's machinery and securing triumph. It just goes to show that superhuman strength isn't always about flashy costumes and booming catchphrases, so the next time you find yourself pondering the capabilities of these unsung heroes, let's remember that sometimes it's the quieter, less celebrated members who possess astonishing abilities beyond what meets the eye. And as we continue to unravel the mysteries of the superhero world, let's always keep that sense of wonder alive, because you never know what incredible feats might be lurking just around the corner, ready to amaze us.
Coming in at number 10, it's photographic reflexes. This superhero power is usually attributed to one character. At least in Marvel Comics, that character would be Tony Masters, otherwise known as Taskmaster. Taskmaster's photographic reflexes ability allows this guy to watch another person's physical movements and duplicate them without any practice or training, no matter how complex those movements are. Tony is able to duplicate almost any physical activity after seeing it done by someone else only once, even using this ability to master complex gymnastics routines and play difficult pieces of music. But it goes beyond mere mimicry. He has often shown the ability to actually predict an opponent's next move before they even make it if he has studied their fighting style enough. Opponents who are skilled at improvisational fighting styles, or who have a more random, unpredictable style, are less likely to have their moves predicted by Taskmaster, though, of course. Another benefit that comes with his photographic reflexes is that Tony can push his body past its natural limits, meaning his agility and speed can increase itself to match that of other superhuman speed and agility. It also makes him an excellent teacher, so pop that on the resume. Number 9, dimensional storage. While this kind of power is more often just used as a trope in television and comic books where characters pull objects from seemingly out of nowhere, it has also been used as an actual legit power, and it's all a result of spatial manipulation and or dimensional travel. We have seen this ability used by all sorts of characters, from the wizards of Harry Potter with their tense buildings or bags, to characters like Ramona Flowers from Scott Pilgrim who pulled a massive hammer out of a tiny little purse. In DC Comics, Green Lanterns store their lantern batteries in a pocket dimension from which they recall it when they need to recharge their rings. From Marvel, the Mutant Abyss houses a portal to an unknown dimension that he can freely pull objects in and out of. The Spider-Man villain Spot is basically composed of holes that go to a pocket dimension. Deadpool has been known to use this trick from time to time, although it's hardly ever explained because it's Deadpool. Then, of course, most characters with cartoon physics do this too. These pocketed dimensions are not limited to any physical location and can be applied pretty much anywhere. Whether it's a portable bag, a pants pocket, a closet, or with a character like the X-Men's Dupe, it's literally inside of him. A hero with this ability can basically store anything, even people, so long as whatever it is fits the entry point. There's no need to worry about the weight of the objects in storage either, as it's floating in an unlimited space or it's on a massive world-sized dimension, eliminating the strain that comes with carrying it. I think this is pretty awesome. Number 8. Cypher. Cypher has what some people believe to be a pretty horrible mutant ability, especially when it comes to combat. Personally, I would kill to be able to subconsciously translate any written or spoken language, human or alien. He can also subconsciously understand body language and intention, as well as decipher codes and computer languages. After he was resurrected, and also so Marvel could make him actually useful, everything that he sees is interpreted into language, basically making him able to read life. I don't even know if that makes sense. Everything I just said is strange enough, but I can wrap my head around it to some degree. Sort of. Then, you tell me that this man can, quote, speak in binary code. In New Mutants Volume 3, number 14, a guy operating a mech comes upon Cypher during a battle, and this mutant speaks to the mech saying, "Hello, you don't have to do this. You know, I can set you free, show you how to think for yourself." And he says it in both English and binary code at somehow the same time. The dude operating the mech understands him since he's speaking English, but for some reason, the mech, which is not artificial intelligence, also understands him, boots the operator out, and begins talking in zeros and ones. I don't even know. Number 7. Darkness Manipulation. Sometimes called Umbra Kinesis or Shadow Manipulation, darkness manipulation is the ability to create and manipulate darkness or shadows. It's basically control over the absence of light, which is a weird thing to think about. What's cool is that usually this darkness is so powerful that it cannot be penetrated by light, and sometimes not even by other energies either. Characters with this power are able to give their own shadows life, and others can generate darkness, which in DC comes from a place called the Shadowlands or the Dark Zone, and in Marvel, certain characters like the hero Cloak access it from the Dark Force dimension. DC's Teen Titan Raven, along with Richard Swift, the Shade, Darklight, and Shadowlass are all capable of doing this. So is the Bat God Barbados, who is able to generate and manipulate dark energy and cloak areas in darkness, and even fire dark lightning from his hands. Dark lightning makes no sense, but just roll with it. The Marvel symbiote god Null possessed the ability to create, control, and manipulate a fount of eldritch darkness, which was a manifestation of the primordial void that existed before the universe itself, quote unquote. That's what he calls the living abyss. With this, he was able to create the symbiotes themselves, including the all-black symbiote, which granted a similar but less powerful version of this power to others like Gore the God Butcher. Jordan Lewis, otherwise known as the mutant Gloom, had the ability to release a nerve-dampening darkness at will, temporarily blinding whoever he chooses. It's just a cool power, man. Number 6. Dazzler. Dazzler, otherwise known as Alison Blair, is a mutant with the ability to transduce sound into light. She is also a very gifted singer and performer, which she uses in tandem with her powers to just blow people's minds at her concerts. But she is more than that. She can take any source of sound other than her own voice, unless it's projected back at her, as light energy, which she stores up and can use in a bunch of really cool ways. Obviously, using the lights she emits, she can blind adversaries, but she can also create therapeutic light to help allies. Her Dazzle Blast, which is either the best name ever or the worst name ever, is a light show so intense that it overwhelms the nervous systems of whoever is watching it and can knock people out. She can also shoot lasers that can cut through solid metal and photon blasts that strike with concussive force. She can create quote-unquote light fog to hide allies. She can create force fields for offensive and defensive purposes, and she can even fly with this power somehow. She's become the Herald of Galactus in a What If comic, and she was actually one of the more impressive versions of Thor from God Doom's Thor Corps, even coming over to the 616 reality at one point. Dazzler is pretty awesome. Number 5. Count Vertigo. Count Werner Vertigo is of royal blood. He is heir to the throne of Vlatava. It's truly the most prestigious of titles, I swear to God. But that is not his superpower. Count Vertigo had a hereditary inner ear defect that affected his balance, which is also not a superpower. But Vertigo had a small electronic device implanted in his right temple that compensated that problem for him. Now, after tinkering with that device, Vertigo learned that he was able to affect other people's balance as well as fixing his own, distorting their perceptions so that they literally could not tell up from down, an effect known as Vertigo. Werner used this skill most notably to fight Green Arrow, and that's honestly a pretty great hero to choose when you have this kind of power. He'd also join up with the Suicide Squad and Checkmate, using his powers to make people dizzy to his advantage. Honestly, this power is much more effective than one might think, and it has been used by other characters in comicdom, most notably Marvel's, wait for it, Vertigo, who utilizes psionic equilibrium distortion. With this power, she is able to project swirling mental waves of psionic distortion into her environment that affect the nervous systems of other living beings, focusing on the organs of the inner ear, causing extreme vertigo, nausea, disorientation, and have them experience hallucinations. Her distortion waves can render others unconscious and can also interfere with the superhuman powers of others, preventing their use or causing them to function incorrectly. That's an elite power, and I think it would be just fun to do to people who annoy you, because that's what I would do. Number 4. Blink. You know, in the beginning of the X-Men Days of Future Past live action movie when there's that really cool fight scene in the bunker between some mutants and the ultra advanced Sentinels? Well, you know that mutant that was firing out portals and stuff, just like throwing them all over the place? That is Blink, and she is super cool. Clarice Ferguson's power has a few different uses. Obviously, there are bright pink portals, but she can also throw that same energy as a sort of missile that will teleport those, or even parts of those, that she hits. The range of her power is actually quite impressive, as it has a potential range of as far as the moon and back, which is freaking far. With the potential of her abilities and the cool way it's used, and even just how awesome she looks, you'd think she would have done a lot more, but she seems to not really have a whole lot of meaningful appearances, except if you want to see her being as amazing of a character as she should be, you can find her in the Age of Apocalypse, and she is so cool. Number 3. Groot. The Flora Colossi from Marvel Comics are a pretty unique alien species because they are all basically just humanoid trees, and because we only really know of one, Groot. As walking and talking trees, they can do a hell of a lot more than your average human or alien. One of Groot's greatest abilities is that he's been completely destroyed on 3 separate occasions in the comics and has been able to completely grow back from nothing but a twig. You think being made of wood, Groot is incredibly susceptible to fire, but nope! The wood-like organic material that makes up his body is not only resistant to fire, but is thick enough that it's resistant to almost all weapons too, giving him pretty impenetrable natural armor. But then, because Groot has control over his own vine-like body and can grow and shape himself for a whole variety of things. He can grow to become even larger than he already is, he can elongate his limbs to reach things or act as a bridge or a ladder, he can turn his limbs into weapons, even wooden blades that are somehow actually sharp, but he also somehow has super strength. But then on top of all of that, Groot also has the ability to control plants, heal others, and he's highly intelligent and has a tremendous grasp of quasi-dimensional superpositional engineering. So yeah, it would be really cool to be Groot. Number 2. Husk. Paige Guthrie is part of a family that has a lineage of mutant abilities. Sam Guthrie was Cannonball, Joshua Guthrie is Icarus, Melody Guthrie is Arrow, and Jebediah Guthrie, I don't remember his superhero name, but he has superpowers. Paige's power is a wee bit unorthodox though. She has the ability to shed her skin, and by concentrating on specific chemical or elemental formulas, she can cause the layer of skin underneath to be a different element or shape or state. She can become any solid that she has studied and can imitate metal, diamonds, granite, wood, rubber, and even glass. And somehow, I don't know how this works, she's been shown to turn into a sharp-toothed lizard one time. I don't know. She doesn't have perfect control over her abilities at this point in time, but when she transforms, she obviously gains different abilities depending what she turns into. She has granted herself super strength and durability, flame generation, and many other things. Her shedding lets her get rid of dirt or sweat and even minor injuries, which is both cool and kind of a little freaky. She has all kinds of potential if she is given the time to properly train her powers. And finally, in at number 1, it's pheromonal persuasion. Zebediah Killgrave, the Purple Man from Marvel Comics, has the ability to secrete pheromones that, once inhaled by another person, allows him to control them using literal verbal commands, making them completely obedient to him. This power essentially lets him use words to completely override the willpower of others. Now, while Killgrave used this power to commit quote, normal crimes like robbing banks, also, more predominantly, would use his ability to manipulate those of the opposite gender to fulfill his own desires. Which is both incredibly despicable, but sadly, probably pretty realistic. Luckily though, this is not a power that is unique to Kilgrave. Other characters like DC's Poison Ivy, Crimson Fox, and Resurrection Man, or Marvel's Spider-Woman, Daken, and the other members of Purple Man's family all use variations of this power for all kinds of things. Most characters using the power use it for villainy because, let's be honest, controlling others is pretty evil. A lot of the time though, it's used for romantic purposes, but it can be used to mark territory to make people not want to enter certain spaces, as a way of leaving a trail for somebody to follow, to disorient others or throw others off one's trail, and to increase one's level of stealth. It's such an incredibly subtle ability and versatile ability which makes it fly under the radar, but it's allowed some characters to reach super levels of power without much effort at all.